In a beautiful school illuminated by the rays of the sun, someone can be seen telling their friend that the test took too long. Two students are talking and one of them explains that the test took a long time because their friend answered all the questions on paper and then stared blankly at the sheet. Some rumbles can be heard, and the two young people who were previously conversing turn their attention to something beside them. Several military cars and trucks begin to pass through the streets, and it's even possible to see students being taken by these vehicles. The young people being escorted by the military vehicles seem calm, just talking and having fun during the ride. The girls, upon seeing this, become extremely excited as if they were admiring the boys in the vehicles. Seeing this, the black-haired boy who was previously talking says that those students are not real adventurers but rather students from some specialized school. The logo on the vehicle was a sword embedded, and the black-haired student explains to his friend that the logo belonged to the warrior school. In the history of this world, the events that occurred in the past began without any prior warning, and a completely burning and destroyed city can be seen. Several blue portals in the sky started to open, and various creatures emerged from them, taking over the city and leaving people desperate. Later, science would prove that a world similar to Earth existed on the other side of the universe. However, on that planet, a certain event occurred that shattered the world, wiping out any form of life proliferation that existed there. As a result, the remnants of that planet began to fly towards Earth and strike it. With this event, people were shocked, looking up at the sky and seeing various fire comets falling on their planet. And because of these shards, parts of the distorted planet began to merge with Earth. In the middle of the city, a girl notices that from one of the shards, a gigantic tree emerged and spread across Earth, and this event was called the Yahello phenomenon. Thus, unnatural laws and a variety of monsters were introduced to Earth, and creatures of all kinds began to appear. With this, 17% of Earth's area was affected, and humans lost control of this area, calling it the danger zone. In the danger zone, on the day of the Yahello event, a creature resembling a demon holds the skull of a soldier in its hands. The last remaining soldier of the platoon is panting as he looks at the demon staring at him. After finishing off some soldiers, the creature continues to hold one, standing still, and these places that were taken over by monsters are called dungeons. All the creatures that came from that world have a status table showing their strength, and the name of the demon that wiped out the military platoon is Horn of Terror. That beast called Horn of Terror remains motionless, and the surviving soldier tries to reason about what he should do. Opening its demonic mouth, the terrifying monster charges at the last soldier, who in return starts firing his precision rifle at the creature. However, apparently all the shots pass through the creature and merely bounce off its powerful carapace as it continues running to kill its last victim. The beast quickly reaches the soldier and hits him squarely in the stomach, throwing him far away and making him spit blood. With the impact of the punch, the man crashes against the wall, nearly passing out and completely defeated. Still trying to stand for all his friends who have already fallen, the young man is practically exhausted and out of strength. None of these humans had time to prepare for these creatures, as even a military soldier had only a D-rank status. Humans as a species had no ability to do anything, and the creature begins to approach the fallen young soldier. The demon, with a malevolent smile, stares at the soldier who couldn't react or do anything. And even with all this catastrophe, humans had some luck, and finally, the Horn of Terror charges to finish off his target. Disasters were not the only thing that happened on that land, and even from that disaster, something good happened for humans. The soldier, who was about to be struck, begins to summon a blue aura and suddenly manages to block the creature's punch that was coming his way. The natural limits that humans are born with as a species prevent them from reaching a very high level of evolution. And the limitations of that species' potential, caused by Earth's natural law, began to crack, and the soldier continues to hold the beast's attack. Then, with extreme ease, the soldier begins to lift the beast, crushing its hand while the monster tries to break free. The man's status, which was previously only B and D rank, begins to rise exponentially, and the seal he had as a human starts to break. As they're surrounded by chains preventing him from evolving quickly, that soldier manages to awaken by breaking those bonds. The soldier uses a judo move, utilizing his new power to throw his opponent. With all this strength, the man slams the beast into the ground, ending it immediately. After that, the soldier stares at the monster's body, determined to use his power from that day forward to help humans and defeat those beasts. Even though this phenomenon affected all humans on Earth, the awakened abilities were different for each person. Some who awakened these abilities decided to train and improve their new powers. Other individuals who discovered their new potential and abilities chose to use them for a purpose. Amidst the chaos, a new portal can be seen opening, with several horned demons invading Earth. However, their leader notices something. An army of humans stood in front of the portal, just waiting for the beasts to arrive. These individuals chose to use their new potential to reclaim control of the dungeons and the danger zone. They were special agents who worked for a single reason and were called adventurers. In front of that portal, a war between the horned demons and the humans began, alongside that soldier who defeated the first of their monsters. And that's how the era of dungeons and the era of adventurers began, with the enormous battle between two species. After the battle, where a few human knights survived, the entire world glorified their deeds. Everyone was completely inspired by the strength and dedication, especially of the first soldier who awakened that power and decided to fight against the beasts. Not long after that, organizations focused solely on training adventurers were established worldwide. The best among the training facilities for teenagers in the Republic of Korea was one in particular. It managed to produce the best adventurers in the last 25 years and was recognized worldwide as the Warrior School. We then return to the moment when the two friends were talking and one of them mentions that at that school they even tell students what happens inside the dungeon. The black-haired friend asks what happens if one of them dies, and his colleague replies that they have a reason to be confident since there's a test to enter it. However, before he could continue explaining, his attention is diverted to a group of girls who were screaming. The girls were completely in love with someone, claiming that this person was extremely attractive and had an indescribable beauty. This person was a blonde boy with large ears, a half-elf who was just sitting and being applauded by all those girls. The friends who were talking wonder what that was about, and his friend explains that the boy is always on TV. His name is Diev Choi. His father is a famous adventurer, and his mother is an elf. They say he's a genius, and people talk about how he will reach the highest rank of adventurers. The boy, with all his appearance and charisma, smiles at the girls, which makes them extremely excited. It is shown that he has already gone into the dungeon 14 times. And the black-haired young man, seeing this, becomes extremely irritated because he didn't think the boy was all that, and his friend begins to tease him, saying that he's just jealous. The black-haired boy starts arguing with his friend, but he ignores him, noticing that another friend was coming and starts talking to the young man, inviting him to hang out. However, Jeryong, a black-haired boy, says he couldn't go in hopes that at least his friends would have fun. The other black-haired young man starts teasing, saying that he couldn't do that after the exams and that he should just go have fun with them. But before he could continue talking, his friend with parted hair quickly punches him in the stomach, telling Jeryong that it was okay for him not to go this time. Jeryong, who is looking at his phone, shifts his attention to his colleagues, thanking them and saying goodbye. The young man with parted hair asks his friend to be a bit more sensitive next time and wonders if he knew why Jeryong was doing all this. In a flashback, we see our protagonist Jeryong beside an elderly person who is on a hospital bed. Returning to the present moment, the boy, while walking through the city streets, looks at his phone at an alert because he hadn't paid that month's hospital bills. The boy also receives a notification from his boss, calling him to work since a new job had come in for him. Duyab, who was waving at his fans, notices something that catches all his attention, turning his gaze towards Jeryong. The blonde boy begins to stare at the young man's back as for some reason he felt that something was wrong. His friend, who is also part of the warrior school, asks if that boy did something to the half-elf. However, Diev responds that he didn't. Looking at Jeryong, he thinks of something but assumes it must just be his imagination. Our protagonist, during his walk through the streets, was extremely stressed, telling himself that he didn't want to work. In an abandoned subway station, Jeryong begins to descend the stairs and then passes through a warning tape that was blocking his passage into the place. His boss is a man with white hair named Jawan, and he says that the person next to him, a bald man in a suit, is the new client Jeryong will be working for. The black-haired young man says it's a pleasure to meet him. However, the person hiring the boy's services gets irritated. Seeing the boy, the man tells Jawan that he thought he was going to bring his best employee. However, Am says that Jeryong is the best there. The bald man starts arguing with Jawan, saying that he didn't come there to be fooled by idiots. However, the boss and our protagonist say that he's being rude. Even with Jeryong by his side, the man in the suit doesn't give up, saying that they should call someone who is truly good at what they do. And threateningly, he says that if Jawan didn't bring someone respectable, he would make the two of them regret it. A muscular man who was the bald man's bodyguard is called out by Jeryong, and the boy asks if that man is an adventurer. However, the boy rephrases his question, stating that the muscular man was a retired adventurer, and that's why he's following an old man, merely obeying orders. The bald man is extremely surprised by the boy's attitude, but before he can say anything, his subordinate calls him. Snapping his fingers, Pilview states that there's no need to continue this conversation, and that he'll break an arm or a leg of both the boss and Jeryong to teach them a lesson. The bald man is pleased, saying that he knew his employee could handle things and orders him to grab the boy. He then adds that if the two in that room didn't beg for their lives, they would die right there. The boy starts pretending to be scared and sarcastically begins to ask for help, questioning what he should do. But changing his posture and with a blue aura emanating from him, Jeryong states that he didn't know how to beg, and it's revealed that our protagonist had illegally returned to the dungeon 371 times. As a form of government propaganda, it's explained to us how dungeon smuggling works. Every day, adventurers work hard to explore the dungeons and defeat the monsters within them, thus helping humanity to prosper. When they successfully explore the entire dungeon and get rid of all the enemies, they gain an unimaginable amount of treasures. However, before adventurers leave the dungeon, the treasures must be handed over for government inspection. This is because many of them have incredible and even unimaginable power that is beyond human control. If such things are put into circulation without permission, they can be used for evil, putting many lives at risk. Thus, the Adventurers Association must inspect and register these treasures to determine what they are. After that, they will charge the appropriate fees according to the value of each treasure for the adventurers. However, many people violate this rule to take advantage and bypass the system for their own benefit. There are adventurers who are tempted by money and don't want to pay the enormous and abusive fees. Secretly, away from the government, they keep these treasures without the inspectors noticing. If these criminals are not caught, society as a whole will suffer a tremendous loss, which can create endless problems. That's why the propaganda ends by asking all citizens who see smugglers stealing to report them so that these bandits can be punished. After the brief explanation, we return to the moment when the fight between the ex-adventurer and Jerryong stopped. The boy's boss was calmly lighting a cigarette, and next to him, the bald man is confused, asking how the man could be so calm. Seeing that the man wasn't showing any reaction at all, he calls Jawon to clear up a doubt. Looking at his subordinate and the young boy who were starting to prepare to fight, he asks the boss if he's really going to let that happen. Jawon questions the bald man if he's going to chicken out after coming this far, and upon hearing that, the man retorts, saying that they should be the ones scared. He also explains that the reason Pilgyu retired wasn't because of injuries, but because he attacked teammates, and that he wouldn't go easy on the boy. Our protagonist hears this, and after repeating the crime his rival had committed, sarcastically remarks that it was very scary, affirming that Pilgyu was indeed a criminal. Pilgyu begins to mock and boast, saying that the guy he killed was pathetic, just holding him back, and he simply threw the trash away. Upon hearing this, Jerryong starts to laugh, saying that he understood what the man meant. He then asserts that Pilgyu should be self-aware because he was also trash, having caused trouble and lost his license due to irresponsibility. But before the boy could continue talking and mocking, the man quickly lunges to punch him in the face. However, noticing where he had struck, the man is startled to realize something. He observes that Jerryong had managed to dodge simply by turning his face to the side, and the boy remarks that attacking like that was quite rude. Pilgyu becomes enraged and a green aura begins to emanate from him. Then the man charges to finish off Jerryong. Wanting to provoke his rival, the boy says that since he was being attacked, he would counter with a quick kick. And with a resounding impact, the boy leaps, striking his opponent's jaw with his leg. After taking the full force of the blow, the man becomes somewhat dazed, trying to process what had just happened right there. Jerryong's boss remains calm, but the bald man is impressed by our protagonist's speed. Jawon once again asserts that he brought the most skilled person he knew, while Pilgyu is shocked by the kick he received. After the impact, Yu begins to taunt the man, saying there was a surprise since, judging by his appearance, he expected the bulky man to be a bit tougher. Jawon comments that Lee was lost as the boy treated that smuggler like just a normal kid. However, those reflexes and the power behind the kick to the man's chin had already reached the level of professional. The boy also remarks that it seems the ex-adventurer is beginning to understand that this might be a fight he can't win. However, the bald man doesn't give up, stating that the kid was really good, but it was just a lucky kick. Before the bald man could continue speaking, Jerryong's boss responds that he could only feel pity for the big guy. Blinded by rage, Pilgyu removes his shirt, allowing his aura to surge even more, and Jawon, seeing this, asserts that Lee was undoubtedly a tank. Next to him, the bald man is extremely surprised that Jawon could read his subordinate's abilities, and comments that the old man shouldn't be so shocked. The bulky man says that no matter what cheap trick our protagonist decided to use, he was still just a smuggler, and for that reason, was going to show him something interesting. Immediately after, several veins begin to bulge on his body, and Lee starts charging a green energy. Jerryong explains that after the adhesion, people began to awaken abilities that exceeded their limitations. However, each person has different talents and types, and as expected, they would awaken completely different latent abilities. Adventurers, of course, took on specific training that matched their abilities and assigned roles to themselves. Looking impressed at his rival, Jerryong states that one of those roles was called a tank. Pilgyu became extremely stronger and more muscular after using various techniques to perfect and increase his stats. The tank is a position where you protect your teammates from the dangers of the dungeon. In this role, the adventurer faces all the monsters head-on in the vanguard without being able to retreat or show fear. The strength in their bodies, trained to the limit, allows tanks not even to feel some bullets fired at them. However, higher-ranked tanks can even withstand immense firepower and missiles easily, and are essentially a protective barrier. Observing his rival's transformation, Yu acknowledges that he is powerful, affirming that the man truly is an adventurer. Pilgyu, after using all his buffs, quickly charges with both hands to attack the boy in front of him. Jerryong, though struggling, manages to dodge, but the ground wasn't so lucky, and the entire floor of that subway is shattered. With debris flying in his face, our protagonist tries to land, feeling the air from all that power rushing towards him. The bald man, after sensing that power and being practically a normal human, is almost blown away by the wind that formed. However, a hand helps him stay on his feet. The one saving him was Jawon, who remained as if nothing had happened, then calmly asking the bald man if he was okay. The man says that, in any case, that adventurer was a bastard because he was really going to mess up someone else's business place like that just for a rivalry. Lee charges toward Jerryong, who is in a fighting stance, and the boy just watches his opponent advance. Quickly, the man throws another punch, and the boy narrowly dodges it. With an extremely smug expression, Pilju asks our protagonist what's going on. He also questions why Jerryong isn't using any of his previous tricks, but the young man remains deep in thought. Jerryong retorts, stating that he's not an idiot and wouldn't fall for such an obvious trap like the one the tank was setting. Observing and feeling all the power radiating from Lee, Jerryong's boss remarks that the ex-adventurer isn't bad. Pilju's physical strength was around the level of a truck, and if a normal person were hit, every bone in their body would be pulverized. But seeing that there could be more destruction in his territory, Jawon orders Jerryong to hurry up and finish it, because if he didn't, the boy would have to pay for all the damage if anything else broke, and the young man realizes he's running out of options. Pilju maintains that same expression as before, now saying that it seems the boy's boss doesn't understand what's happening. He also emphasizes that Jerryong's cheap tricks are no match for a professional's technique. However, Yu appears to ignore him and suddenly looks to the side, saying that it seems good. The young man notices that a strong metal beam is positioned beside him, and he quickly places his hand on it. Lee doesn't understand that move and is confused, wanting to know what the young man was going to do with it. Jerryong begins to analyze the iron bar in his hand, realizing that it could actually be used, and then states that it should at least be enough. While Yu is distracted, Pilju charges at him again. The man is so furious that he's gritting his teeth with his aura spilling out. Jerryong explains that due to their enormous durability, the general belief is that tanks are unbeatable beings. However, that's not the case because they have a very clear weakness and a natural enemy, and at that moment, Jawon informs the bald man that the fight is over. Pilju continues to rush at his enemy, completely enraged and determined to end the battle. However, Jerryong doesn't retreat and also charges forward with the iron in his hand. The weakness of a tank is an entity that can focus a powerful and destructive force on a specific point. And at that exact moment, with his improvised weapon, the boy moves to strike his enemy and prove his strength. And DPS, a damage per second, is the primary weakness of a tank, and after saying that, the boy strikes his opponent's jaw with the iron bar, unleashing a blast of energy backward. With the blow, the ex-adventurer spits blood, practically fainting from the attack. Jawon isn't surprised at all, unlike the bald man who is completely confused by what just happened before his eyes. After the strike, the tank immediately falls backward, unconscious for a few seconds, and then quickly regains consciousness. With his mouth full of blood, Pilju asks how the protagonist learned to cut like that. But upon hearing this, the boy is confused, asking what the man is talking about. He then says that he doesn't know what Lee is thinking, but he's definitely wrong. However, in his mind, he thinks that perhaps Lee isn't entirely wrong, as he may have seen that person before and therefore recognized Jerryong's cutting style. That person was his father, who was known worldwide and had once been extremely powerful. Our protagonist begins to recount his past, and we see him as a child walking through the corridors of his house, reflecting on how, when he was very young, his father was the greatest adventurer in the world to him because the boy felt immense pride in the man, and his favorite pastime was watching his father train in the backyard. And it wasn't just because he was family. The man truly was powerful. His name was Yu Seong, and the man had a muscular appearance and radiated aura and power. This was the soldier we saw in the past, the first human to awaken and defeat one of the monsters. A flashback is shown to explain that Seong was one of the heroes of the first generation, who were called the first adventurers. For those who didn't experience it themselves, the story of the first generation is a grand legend. But for the adventurers of that time, it was hell, as they had to witness countless people losing their lives and face battles daily. And more than anything, the main problem was that there was no information about the dungeons or similar things, about what kind of place the dungeons were or even what kinds of monsters inhabited them, which made exploration even more complicated. In the flashback, Seong is seen alongside his ally, preparing to fight a giant worm-like monster. Even monsters that are considered easy to defeat in modern times were formidable challenges for adventurers in the past. The Gakamuleth, the beast that our protagonist's father was facing, begins to spit a corrosive green liquid, hitting Seong's friend. Seong narrowly escapes the attack, but when he looks to the side, he sees his friend being dissolved by the worm's attack. For the adventurers of that time, any creature was an unknown calamity capable of destroying everything. Yu Seong, after witnessing his friend being melted away, quickly becomes enraged and strikes the beast with his spear. This was a time when adventurers had no information to fight against the monsters. After delivering the blow, Seong realizes something he didn't want to see. His titanium alloy spear wasn't resistant to the monster's corrosive attack. Items that are now considered common didn't even exist back then, so adventurers had to make do with what they had. The first generation of adventurers went through trial and error, risking their lives to discover more information about the dungeons. In the flashback, Seong charges at the worm. In the underground dungeon where Yu was, some adventurers arrive as reinforcements. The three young adventurers, upon seeing the situation and what was happening, are left breathless, merely observing the scene. Amidst the many people who had been dissolved, the only one left standing was Seong. having defeated the creature with whatever he had at his disposal. The survivors passed on their experiences and accomplishments to the next generation to help them. And after all their deeds for the good of humanity, they were considered heroes. Seong lived this life defeating creatures and unknown beings for many, many years. After evolving greatly as a hero and as a person, he became known as the Dragon Hunter after years of adventuring. This nickname was given to the first person who managed to defeat a dragon, and Seong is seen standing imposingly atop the body of one of those beasts. When people saw this news, they were shocked and amazed, and Seong was considered the strongest adventurer in Asia. And Seong was also an ordinary person and the father of our protagonist, and the boy expresses that he respected him deeply. Jae-ryong remembers his father training with his spear, showing all of his power and aura, creating a huge windstorm. More than anyone else in the world, Jae-ryong believed that his father was invincible until one fateful day when he saw something that traumatized him. Suddenly, the man who was in his physical prime and training began to cough up blood unexpectedly. Our protagonist, as a child, ran towards his father to see what was happening. However, the man asked his son to stop and not come any closer. According to the doctors, the cause of this sudden weakness and decline was poisoning, and Jae-ryong cried a lot as he watched his father in that state. At the hospital, he explains that during one of his explorations, his father encountered a deadly poison that contaminated him. As he had always done, his father tried to overcome it more than anything, facing the challenges head-on. However, after decades of overworking himself, his body was at its limit, and even that first dragon hunter couldn't withstand it. During the time Seong was weak, colleagues he had trusted with his life came and handed him a piece of paper. These people were disguised as vipers who took advantage of Seong's vulnerability at that time and took away his fortune and work. For years, in addition to the illness, he suffered mentally and physically, believing that he had only made mistakes up to that point and that nothing he did was rewarded. Years passed, and even when our protagonist was already a teenager, he saw his father sitting on a hospital bed, his body severely weakened. Finally, Jae-ryong mentions that years later, the world began to forget about the dragon hunter Seong, and his father lost his identity as a hero. After losing everything and suffering from an incurable poison that no medical science could cure, all that was left as a reward for you was to be a forgotten adventurer. We then return to the moment when Jae-ryong had just defeated Pilju. The boy simply stares at his opponent, then turns around and starts walking away while the man tries to mutter something. Our protagonist, after all the memories, becomes extremely irritated, throwing the piece of iron he was holding and walking towards the exit. The bald man is still shocked by everything he saw, thinking that his subordinate was the strongest man. However, Jo-won remarks that everything went well, though the man remains incredulous, unable to believe that his partner Pilju lost to a kid. But the protagonist's boss remarks that perhaps the bulky man wasn't a good adventurer, which could have been one of the reasons. Jae-ryong interjects, saying that the man was bragging about hitting his own comrades, which was just a sign of how weak he truly was. As he continues walking past the bald man, the boy states that there are only two reasons why a good adventurer retires. Either their body breaks down to the point where they can no longer explore or face creatures, or they die during an exploration and are never seen again. Yu puts his jacket back on, saying that he didn't know what Pilyu's salary was, but if it was more than minimum wage, the bald man should fire him. Seeing this as an opportunity, Jo-won approaches his client, apologizing and asking the bald man to understand their side. He then asserts that now the fee for the job will be doubled due to the situation that occurred. However, the man in the suit is about to protest, but before he can, Jae-ryong's boss gives him a menacing look, saying that the boy was the one who provoked first. He then adds that he and Jae-ryong don't work for free, and seeing that he wasn't in the best position, the bald man agrees and says it's fine. After some time extorting his client, the boy's boss begins to call Jae-ryong over. The man asks if he has ever heard of the Imperial Wasp, but Yu, upon hearing this while drinking water, immediately spits it out. Wiping the water from his mouth, Jae-ryong asks if they'll have to fight that, as even for him, that monster was a bit too much. Jo-won explains that the Imperial Wasp is a monster whose danger level is considered the highest not only in Korea, but in the entire world. What was once a beautiful and lovely city called Uido is now the nest of the Imperial Wasp and has become a demonic kingdom in Korea with extremely high difficulty. The man then explains that even for high-ranking adventurers, taking down one of these monsters is difficult, because these things spread out everywhere. For any smuggler, fighting one of these creatures is practically suicide. However, for a white-rank adventurer, it was extremely possible that they could accomplish it. Jo-won explains that according to the bald man, there was a large raid the previous day that wasn't publicized. The boss continues the explanation, stating that the government army and 7 white-rank adventurers form an attack squad to invade the Wasp's nest. Jae-ryong is shocked that they gathered 7 white-rank adventurers, and Jo-won adds that adventurers of that level are so famous that if even 2 of them come together, the media goes wild. With this challenge, it seems they failed to achieve the original goal of eradication, but the adventurers managed to hunt the Queen Wasp. However, one of the 7 stole the royal jelly of the Imperial Wasp and ordered a subordinate from the attack squad to smuggle it. Jae-young seems confused, not knowing what this royal jelly is, and Jo-won begins to explain that it's a nutritional supplement given to a newly born queen by the wasps. Struggling to understand the situation, you ask why a white-rank adventurer would smuggle a nutritional supplement, as it was extremely dangerous. The boy's boss explained that there have been occasions where royal jelly was brought into this world, and from what he knew, if a human consumed it, they could even come back from the dead, and upon hearing this, our protagonist is extremely shocked. In the underground city in a deep subway, we hear someone say that all paths to the dungeons are now strictly controlled. This person begins walking through those abandoned corridors, heading to a certain location while repeating this phrase several times. It is revealed that this person was our protagonist's boss, and the man says that this isn't true. Looking at a gate with various red markings, the man thinks that this proves there's always a way to bypass government restrictions. With a blue aura around his hand, he begins to touch the gate, doing something to merge his magic with the markings. His energy reacts with that of the gate, and a massive blue energy light shines throughout the area. The auras begin to merge with the markings there, and then something happens and the red markings start to disappear. Our protagonist was right behind his boss, and Jo-won tells the boy that even though he always says this, he'll repeat it, asking Jae-young to be careful. As he cleans his hands, he concludes that this job will be especially annoying and a bit more troublesome than the others. For some reason, you remain silent the entire time, just listening and staying quiet. Trying to get the boy's attention, Jo-won blows a puff of smoke from his cigarette into the young man's face. The young man begins to wave his hand to disperse the smoke, and then asks why his boss did that so suddenly. Jo-won explains that he did it because the boy had his head in the clouds and wasn't paying attention to the mission. The boss asks if the reason the young man was acting that way was because he was still thinking about the medicine that could bring the dead back to life. Jae-young starts walking toward the gate, stating that it didn't make sense since such things are really not reliable. Leaning against the massive gate, he thinks that even if it's considered an unparalleled antidote, it won't be able to cure his father's condition. And with that, the young man begins to open the mysterious gate from which a strong light starts to emerge. The boy also thinks that if there were something like that, his father would never have abandoned that thread of hope. After opening the gate and passing through it, the young man finds himself in a mountainous region with a beautiful landscape of a clear blue sky. Jae-young tries to shield his eyes from the sunlight to get a better view of the stunning scenery in front of him. After the adhesion, dungeons were created all over the vastness of the earth. But among them, there are two considered the largest in Korea, and they are peculiar. The first is Jeju-do, a dungeon fused with a volcanic mountain range that has active volcanoes and burning rocks. The other is fused with the Agar jungle, and at that moment, the young man was starting to prepare for an exploration. The Agar dungeon is located in what used to be Yeouido in the middle of Seoul. Where you was, it's possible to see a destroyed city now overtaken by a forest. The young man informs that with Yeouido at the center of Mapo, Yongsan, and other nearby cities were all controlled by this dungeon, and most of it remains unknown. A large portion of the region is only D rank, but Yeouido, where the wasp is located, is S rank, and the person responsible for the jelly tried to transport it to the meeting area in Boroma. Jo-won explains that however, after arriving there, the transporter lost contact with the others, and while he might have fled, it's not the most likely option. The boss also says that the man must have dealt with all sorts of things to get out of there, and well, all our protagonist has to do is reach the location and bring back the jelly. But before Jae-young sets off, Jo-won mentions that he'll finish his thought, asking the young man not to get distracted and just focus on the mission. Smiling while putting on a mask, the boy asks if his boss thinks he would run away. However, Jo-won firmly states that the boy isn't stupid enough to do that. The boss also asks his subordinate to be careful and remember that the royal jelly is precious and humans aren't the only ones willing to risk their lives to get it. After his boss's entire speech, the boy uses a rope to safely descend from the cliff into the middle of the forest. And there in the center, he thinks that he's sure the entire forest must be smelling that peculiar odor. However, when he looks down, something catches his attention, leaving the young man shocked and irritated. In a forest soil, an enormous footprint of a giant was there, and the boy states that he's sure various things will be attracted by the jelly's scent. Meanwhile, deeper within that vast expanse of trees and botany, several birds begin to fly. A girl with pointed ears is seen, extremely out of breath and running from something. The woman tries to stop for a moment to rest behind a tree to catch her breath. Her name was Jin Saram, and she was in her first year as a warrior, currently facing the biggest problem of her life. It was supposed to be an easy trip to the dungeon for her intermediate exam, but it's clear that the girl was frozen and utterly terrified. Looking to the side, the young woman remains worried, and it's explained that instead of something easy as it should have been, she encountered a monster that should never have been there. It's then revealed that the creature chasing the girl is a gigantic beast. Jin continues trying to stay silent and still to see if she can escape from the beast that's hunting her. However, a gust of wind begins to approach the girl, and she realizes something she didn't want to. The exam was supposed to be simple. Within the time limit, Jin had to collect as many coins as possible that were placed inside the dungeon. And although it was a test designed to simulate real combat situations, the test area was ranked as low as possible and should have been easy. This was because it was considered a training ground for beginners, one that any novice adventurer could pass. The monster chasing Jin silently approaches, and when the girl realizes it, the beast is grinning right behind her. The woman becomes desperate, and it's explained that even the monsters living there were weak and had low intelligence, but this one was different. The giant with 4 arms and immense strength tries to strike the girl, but she narrowly escapes. Jin thinks she should run, but looking at the size of the monster, she realizes that's impossible, so she has to make another decision. At that moment, the girl notices that all she is left is to hope for a miracle. So she takes out her bow and draws 3 arrows from her quiver to try to arm herself. Despite all the difficulties, she decides to fight back. The 3-star ranked primal titan begins to prepare a monstrous breath. In a desperate attempt to save her life, Jin fires 3 arrows at her enemy. Unfortunately for her, the monster easily raises a hand to shield its face, successfully blocking the weak attack. The girl realizes that the titan's skin is tougher than that of a tank, and her chances of winning are almost nil. The primate then, with one of its 4 arms, quickly strikes the ground, causing another gust of wind and rocks to fly into the air. However, with her extreme skill and speed, the girl manages to escape once again, and even in the air, Jin prepares to fire another arrow. Jin thinks that no matter how many arrows she shoots, it's impossible to pierce the monster. But she has no other choice, so 3 more of her arrows fly towards the beast. But this time, the projectiles are propelled by wind. Even though they only superficially pierce the titan's body, the monster remains unfazed, maintaining its terrifying expression. Looking at the beast, the girl thinks to herself that she didn't need to kill it with her attacks, and it didn't need to dodge or block them. She just wanted it to get a little closer and was hoping the monster would lower its guard for just a moment. The new arrow that Jin readies in her bow is imbued with fire, and the girl is certain that her plan will work. As she lands on the ground, she channels more magic into her arrow, as she is a warrior of a class that imbues magic into the tips of arrows. Finally, determined and confident that she will survive, the woman prepares to teach the beast a lesson. With a powerful bow attack, Jin uses her flame bombardier skill, firing an arrow that tears through the ground. It's explained that the type of magic that can be imbued into the tip of an arrow has absolutely no limits. And what she chose as a last resort was the largest explosion she could manage. After hitting something, the arrow explodes, causing a massive blaze that can be seen throughout the forest. The woman continues to stare at the spot where she launched her attack, trying to see if she managed to defeat the beast. Despite everything, that attack should have been enough to kill any monster with a 3-star danger rank. However, the girl is completely terrified. After the smoke clears, the monster is seen clinging to 2 trees, having narrowly avoided the attack. The monster, having barely escaped, looks enraged with a terrifying expression, furious at the audacity of its prey. And even with all her power, the attack would only have been effective if it had hit its target. Various thoughts flood Jin's mind, and the girl begins to consider that she might die there since she doesn't know what else to do. Before she can think about needing to run, the monster lands on the ground, determined to put an end to the young woman. It quickly charges at her, and in a desperate instant, Jin runs in the opposite direction, trying to escape. The titan continues with a psychotic expression, merely wanting to have fun with its desperate prey. However, as if by a miracle from the heavens, just as she had wished, our protagonist suddenly appears, striking the titan with a weapon. Looking up at the sky, Jin is incredulous at what just happened, gazing at her savior as if he were her hero. Still in the air, Jae-ryong locks eyes with the girl he had just saved, while Jin remains astonished at everything that transpired. The giant, having taken a solid hit to the chin, is still somewhat dazed, trying to stay on its feet. Our protagonist safely lands on top of a tree and thinks that even though he struck the creature on the chin, it didn't seem to be enough. Looking down, the boy notices that the beast is glaring at him with a terrifying expression. He pulls a strange object from his pocket, something resembling a weapon, which is a tool for adventurers. With his bait in one hand and the tool in the other, the boy charges into battle to defeat the beast. Jin, witnessing the situation, is extremely impressed because she never imagined that the young man would be bold enough to attack the monster head-on. The girl thinks that the young man is heading towards certain death, and the enraged primate titan lunges to attack him with 2 of its arms. Shouting loud enough for the girl to hear, Jae-ryong tells her to close her eyes immediately. Even though she doesn't fully understand what he's talking about, Yu quickly points his tool at the monster's face. The beast and Yu are on the verge of a deadly encounter, where only one of them will come out alive. However, from the tool Jae-ryong is holding, a powerful light begins to emanate, and the young man quickly closes his eyes. Right in front of the monster's eyes, a blinding light that illuminates a large part of the forest is emitted from the device, leaving the titan temporarily blind. Sarum, heeding the unknown boy's advice, quickly closes her eyes and raises her arm to shield herself from the device's light. The monster, unaware of what was happening, is completely affected by the light that shot directly into its eyes. The beast begins to roar in anger, and after that, our protagonist lands on the ground, thinking that he used all the power of that tool, even though it was his last one. What he was holding is called a stun light, a tool made from the scales of the oscillating fish that lives in dungeons deep in the ocean. It has an incredible ability called Incapacitate, which offers a lot for its price and has been beloved by countless adventurers. However, because of its incredible performance, many people misused it and several adventurers began to lose their vision. As a result, its production in the present day of that world is strictly banned and prohibited. Even with her eyes closed due to the tool's incredible reach, Serum, not being accustomed to it, begins to open her eyes slowly. Passing by her with his baton, Jaeryong says that he did all of this for her, and now she has to find a way to survive on her own because she only has a few seconds left. Our protagonist thinks that no matter what happens in the dungeon, as long as he doesn't do anything for the adventurer, he probably won't be reported. The boy remembers the moment when his boss said that, frankly, smugglers are like cockroaches to adventurers. Despite that, the bounties for them are very high, so if he acted without thinking, he would be outsmarted and handed over to the government. Therefore, he wasn't going to do anything else. However, as he ran, the boy maintained a firm expression but noticed something behind him that stressed him out. The young man realizes that the girl from before was trying to follow him, and not knowing her intentions, Jaeryong complains. Even though she's out of breath, Jin doesn't give up on her goal and continues running after her savior to thank him. However, of all the lessons he had learned about not being outsmarted, Yu makes a decision and quickly uses his incredible speed. Serum, who was right behind him, realizes that somehow the boy managed to escape her sight in a fraction of a second. Jin asserts that she was sure the boy was just there, but suddenly, he disappeared. With her guard down, she is surprised by a baton that strikes her directly in the neck, pushing her back. Our protagonist pins the girl to the ground and tells her she's too stupid, asking what she was doing. Serum, innocently and without malice, explains that she just wanted to thank him for saving her. Coldly, Jaeryong retorts, asking if she's joking because he's not stupid enough to fall for that nonsense. Showing that she's not so innocent, Serum reveals that she didn't follow him just for that, but because she knew the boy was a smuggler. However, she didn't want to capture him. Instead, she wanted to offer the young man a job, and hearing this, he remains silent for a moment. Seeing the emblem of the Warrior Academy on the shirt the girl is wearing, Yu sighs and lets it go. Removing his baton from the girl's neck, the boy says that he intended to let it slide, but this is her last chance to survive. Turning away and beginning to walk, Jaeryong says that he has no interest in learning from a student of the Warrior Academy. In a tone more imposing than ever before, Jaeryong threatens Jin, warning that he would truly bury her if she interfered with him again. The girl, understanding the seriousness of the threat, remains silent for a moment. Even so, she doesn't give up, saying that the bounty for a smuggler was 50 million, and the bounty for hunters must be 400 million. Jaeryong takes this as an affront and becomes completely enraged, with veins bulging from his body. However, something changes his mind completely when he looks at the girl's hand and sees something impressive. Serum is holding a necklace called Blood of Enkil, and Jin says that he could only buy it if he captured 5 smugglers, which would amount to over 200 million won. With that in her hands, sweating, she tells him that this was just the initial payment, and that if Jaeryong helped her with the exam, she would give him even more money. Stating the girl's wealth, he comments that it's insane, thinking that she was just a spoiled brat, but beyond that, she was filthy rich and crazy. Determined in her objectives, the girl retorts that it didn't matter if she was crazy or not. Raising the necklace again, the young woman states that what mattered was that this opportunity would change the life of our protagonist. Once more, he sighs unexpectedly, saying that he imagined something like this would happen. The young man apologizes, stating that it's Jin's fault and that he really has no reason to kill her. Hearing this, the girl is startled, questioning what he means. A huge shadow begins to block the sun, plunging them into darkness, and looking up, the boy says that he already warned her. Jaeryong mentions that he told her she only had a few seconds, and in the sky, the primate beast is seen leaping to capture the 2 youths after recovering from the flash. The monster, furious, immediately crashes to the ground with its 4 arms, but the 2 young people manage to escape. Suddenly, the girl sees something coming her way, and when she opens her hand to catch it, she realizes it's the same button that our protagonist was using earlier. He tells her that he didn't give it to her just to stare at it, and asks if she remembers the attack she used earlier. Jin recalls the moment she used fire on the arrow. Jaeryong then asks the girl to do it again, conjure those flames on the baton, and throw it back to him. However, the girl panics, stating that she has no magical power left. Before Jin can say anything more, our protagonist insists that she has to figure it out. The monster prepares to attack again, and Jaeryong warns that he won't be able to keep the Titan's attention for much longer with just his fists, so Jin needs to hurry. Serum begins to channel her magic into the baton, and thinks that she has less than a quarter of her magical power left since she spent it all on her last strike. The battle between the Titan and the protagonist ensues, and the young woman considers that she can't deal any damage to that monster with so little power. So instead, she should flee while the boy is distracting the creature, and Yu continues to fight intensely, trying to stay alive. Despite being a bit annoying, our protagonist keeps running, drawing the monster's attention. And before he realizes it, with extreme speed and precision, his flaming baton comes flying towards him, and the young man catches it. After using all that was left in her, launching the baton, Jin thinks that she really is crazy to risk so much for just one person. With that, Jaeryong leaps into the air and starts spinning with his baton, then states that he's disappointed. The boy says that it's much less than a quarter of what she used before and that it's really disappointing. However, he believes it should still be enough, and with confidence, the young man wields his baton and charges to attack the monster. The battle reaches its peak, and at this moment, Sarum thinks that the students of the Warrior Academy have heard this more times than they can count. Analyzing the incredible battle, the girl states that in a fight with a monster, the most important thing for an adventurer isn't just brute strength. The most important thing is a sense of timing, and at this moment, our protagonist is executing it perfectly, dodging attacks and waiting for the right moment. The key is to seize the perfect timing to aim precise strikes, and at this moment, the primate titan misses its attack, leaving itself exposed. In other words, what adventurers must value above all else is the effectiveness of their attack, and at that moment, Jin was deeply impressed by Yu's skill. Yu, after dodging all the attacks from the primate titan and utilizing perfect timing, seizes the opportunity to strike the monster's chin with his baton. An explosion occurs, and after it disperses, the beast's chin is completely disfigured, its face utterly destroyed. The glasses Jiryong was wearing shatter, but upon realizing that his attack was indeed effective, and that he had won, the boy allows himself a small smile. A flashback shows a beautiful school illuminated by the rays of the setting sun on the horizon. The young Jin had just finished playing with her friends, and as it was time to go home, the girl bids them farewell. Sarah notices a bodyguard waiting for her with a car ready to take her home. So the girl says goodbye to her friends, and the girls plan to meet the next day to play again. However, Jin overhears some gossip with her own friends saying that she was very lucky to be able to have whatever she wanted. Jin thinks they were entirely wrong, as she really could have almost everything she saw due to her social status. Her father owned a South Korean company ranked 4th, the Jinsong Group, which was globally known and highly renowned. The successor of the group married an elf from another world, and from this relationship, something that would leave a mark on that world was born. The result was Jin Sarum, a half-elf girl with dark hair and a determined spirit. She respected adventurers more than anyone else and even admired them, seeing them as inspirations. Jin dreamed of becoming an adventurer more than anyone else, and she was willing to give up everything to follow her dream. In the future, shortly after that flashback, a blonde elf is seen saying that something is impossible. Jin is utterly exhausted, lying on the ground, and at this moment, the blonde elf says that the girl's elven blood is very weak and that she might as well be mostly human. The blonde elf tells someone next to him that despite this, continuing to push the girl is very wrong, and it would be better to convince her otherwise. Then Sarum's father, Jin Sung-yu, says that he isn't forcing the girl to do anything, just supporting her, because she dreams of becoming an adventurer. He adds that it's not like elven talents are a requirement to become an adventurer, and the elf in front of him agrees. He then states that compared to a human, the girl does indeed have considerably good talent. But despite that, she's still just slightly above average, and even with her effort, it won't be rewarded. The blonde elf says he'll clarify something for Sung-yu since his daughter isn't just a human from a normal family. She won't give up on her own, and she's as stubborn as her mother, who is the blonde elf's sister. However, even so, the elf coldly says that despite her efforts, the girl will never be strong compared to monster-ranked humans. But if she keeps trying and gets up every time she falls, she might become somewhat decent. Once again, there's a time skip, showing Jin as a teenager. The elf concludes by telling Sung-yu that with her effort, it will be enough for the girl to receive praise and recognition as a normal human. Even so, his daughter was born with many other benefits compared to her lack of talent, such as prosperity, name, and bloodline. These things will make her efforts futile. Regardless of how much she trains, there are things that can't be achieved. People will laugh at her out of envy, and she might become completely isolated, as they will see her as just a spoiled girl. And one thing is certain, even if Jin is extremely strong, she won't be able to handle it for long because social isolation is something that destroys anyone. Since talent doesn't fall from the sky, we return to the moment when Jiryong defeated his enemy. Jin, watching this scene, is completely astonished after so many events unfolding before her eyes. When our protagonist finally lands on the ground, the body of the monster he just defeated also falls, making a tremendous crash in the forest. The beast was completely destroyed and defeated after taking that powerful attack directly to its face. With the baton in his hand, our protagonist walks normally until something tickles his ear, catching his attention. As he looked to the side, for some reason, Jiryong saw Jin, who was completely shocked, as if she were seeing a ghost. Staring at the boy's face, the girl muttered that it was impossible, thinking that her savior was just a high school teenager. After touching his face, the young man finally realized what had happened, becoming extremely irritated for being so careless. In a flashback, Jaewon can be seen advising Jiryong to be careful, not to break his glasses since they were quite expensive. Holding the strange glasses in his hand, Yu comments that they should only cost around 5,000 won as they look like an ordinary item. However, his boss denied this, explaining that those glasses prevented facial recognition, altered the wearer's voice, and had more than 4 magical enchantments. Back in the present, the expensive glasses were completely shattered on the ground after Jiryong delivered that powerful attack. Placing his hand over his face, the boy muttered that things weren't going as he wanted and that it was frustrating. Still confused, the young woman asked if the boy was a veteran of the Warrior Academy. But irritated by everything that had happened that day as he just wanted a normal mission, Jaryong answered harshly, "No." Then, with extreme anger and veins bulging on his face, you demanded that the young woman hand over what she had promised. Unexpectedly, without hesitation, she quickly handed over the necklace, leaving him surprised by how easily it was done. He became annoyed by how rich Jin was and quickly snatched the jewel from her hand before she could even get a good look at it. With the necklace in his hand, Jaryong began to examine it closely and after a brief look, confirmed that it wasn't fake. Catching his attention once more, Jin asked if the boy needed more money. She mentioned that she understood that even if he didn't attend the Warrior Academy, the tuition for the Adventurer's Education Center was quite high. However, before she could offer to pay his tuition, the young man clarified that he wasn't attending any adventurer school. The girl was even more astonished, and he replied that she was completely mistaken in her assumptions. Jaryong explained that he didn't go to any adventurer school and had never even been close to one. On the contrary, he studied at regular school. The girl then asked who taught him to fight, and he responded that no one did. Approaching her with both hands in his pockets and a serious expression, he stated that he learned on his own. This time, it was Jin who became irritated, and she yelled, saying that was utter nonsense. The girl began to argue that his movements and sense of timing weren't those of someone who had never been trained and Jaryong must be joking. However, in a rude and not at all gentlemanly manner, something flew toward the girl, hitting her in the face. Realizing that Jaryong had thrown something at her, she caught it in her hand and asked what it was. But after examining it, Sarum realized it was a school ID card, and upon removing the identity from the plastic, she began to analyze the information of her savior. Seeing the card, she noticed it belonged to Dongying Secondary School and saw that the name of our protagonist was Yu Jaryong. Jaryong said she didn't need to make an effort to remember since that school was just another ordinary one among many in the country. After so many unbelievable events, the girl was on the verge of a breakdown, declaring that it was impossible. Not wanting to be outdone, Yu pointed his baton at the girl and ordered her to hand over something to prove her identity, whether it was a student ID or something similar. After receiving it, the young man began to read it and noticed that the girl's name was Jin Sarum, then checked if the document was genuine. Our protagonist also confirmed that the girl was the same age as him, realizing that she indeed belonged to the Warrior Academy. For some reason, he put that ID in his pocket, and Jin asked why he was doing that. Jaryong, puzzled, explained that at that moment the girl had made an offer, and that's why he couldn't take any risks. Since his identity had been revealed, if he were to take on a mission for Jin, he needed some assurance that he wouldn't be betrayed by her. Moreover, Jaryong mentioned that he wouldn't do a job without taking the necessary precautions, adding that he still intended to do one last thing. The young man pulled out his phone and suddenly put his arm around Jin's shoulders, pulling her into a side hug, leaving the girl very flustered. Yu explains that he's going to take a selfie with Jin because if she ever betrayed him, the photo would serve as proof that Jin was also an accomplice to a smuggler. As the two take the photo, the girl remains in shock, and at that moment, Jaryong realizes she might have made a serious mistake. With a menacing expression, our protagonist tells her to smile for the picture, and it was in that instant that she understood she had gotten involved with someone far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Forcing a small, nervous laugh, the girl gives a fake smile for the camera, but it was too late to back out. Everything had already started, and so Jaryong snaps a picture with Jin beside the corpse of the Titan. After taking the selfie, the boy continues to look at the phone screen, ensuring that everything in the image was just right. He then tells Jin that they should start discussing prices and asks what exactly she wants. Still processing the young man's intense personality, Sarum states that his mission is to collect coins. Jin explains that within the 6-hour time limit, she must collect coins placed in various locations throughout the test area. Her goal was to find a box that contained a coin at a specific location to prove she was a student of the Warrior Academy. The girl also mentions that she already retrieved one coin, so she only needed to collect one more to pass the school's test. Finally, Jin concludes by informing him that the box containing the last necessary coin was quite close by, and our protagonist asks where it was located. The girl reveals that the box is in the ruins of the old Eugene shopping mall, and hearing this, the boy is surprised. As if he had figured something out, Jaryong remarks that he understood everything, but Jin finds his reaction odd. Seeing this, Jaryong decides to explain that he realized their meeting wasn't a coincidence, since what he was searching for was also in the mall. After Yu gives a brief explanation of the mission he's on, the girl is incredulous, shouting that she couldn't believe the boy was after the Imperial Wasp. Having misspoken, the boy corrects himself, saying that he wasn't after the wasp itself, but something like its honey or jelly, though he wasn't sure exactly what it was. Jaryong mentions that apparently this jelly has a very strong scent that attracts monsters, and the primate titan was probably drawn to it as well. Our protagonist states that it doesn't really matter, but he asks if the girl really needs to go to the mall, also inquiring if there wasn't another place with coins. Apprehensive and with her head down, the girl informs him that the mall is the only place with a coin left now because the other groups have likely taken all the other boxes. Hearing this, the boy just stares at the girl, and upon hearing about the groups, he quietly realizes why she was alone. Determined to help Jin, Jerryong says it's okay, and that it's actually more convenient for him this way. Yu tells Jin that they'll enter the place, get the coin and the jelly, and then leave in complete safety. He was about to mention the fee, but the girl, already set on her goal, says she'll pay 950 million won. Jin adds that it's all the money she has, but upon hearing that enormous amount, our protagonist is very impressed by the girl's wealth. Sarum goes on to say that if it's not enough, she would just need a little more time, but before she can continue, Yu interrupts, saying it's sufficient. Turning to start walking toward their objective, the boy says he'll charge more if there's an emergency, but if the plan goes well, that amount will suffice. The boy asks if the girl has enough stamina to run now, and she promptly nods, saying yes. They immediately start a quick run into the forest to reach their goal. The young woman, who's a bit behind and completely out of breath, analyzes Yu running effortlessly ahead of her and thinks that the boy is incredibly fast. As our protagonist runs, he sighs, thinking he accepted the offer too quickly and should have asked for more money since the girl seemed wealthy. During the run, Jin shouts, asking if she can ask the boy a specific question. With a bored expression, he allows her to ask, and then she inquires if he really learned everything on his own. Surprising the girl, he responds that not everything, but the vast majority was learned through training alone. As they continued on their path, Jerryong began to explain his past, mentioning that when he was a child. However, before he could finish his sentence, the boy sensed danger. Right in front of them, two strange, alien-like creatures were hunting their prey. The name of these beasts is Gararaptor, a species native to what was once Boramadan. Upon seeing this, Yu quickly tells Jin to prepare for a fight. She, who was running alongside him, quickly halts, draws her bow, and gets ready to attack the beasts. To her surprise, with incredible speed, Jerryong doesn't even wait for Jin and charges directly at the creatures. It's explained that Jerryong never received any official training as an adventurer, and the skills he possesses now were acquired by risking his life. But there's one exception. When he was younger, he witnessed his father's incredible movements. This allowed him to learn 3 specific techniques. As he approaches the monster with his baton, Jerryong uses one of those techniques against the Gararaptor. The first of these techniques is called the Needle, where he uses all his speed and weight to strike a vital point of his opponent. At this moment, the boy executes the same move. This is a simple yet refined technique that he gained through experience, senses, and above all, his talent. It's a technique that even top-ranked adventurers have not mastered, but Jerryong has perfected it, defeating the first of the monsters with just that one strike. Since the other monster was only a 2-star, it was easily defeated by Jin, who only sustained a few scratches. After putting her bow away, Sarum comments that something felt off since Gararaptors usually travel in groups of at least 5 creatures. Hearing this, Jerryong informs her that it means she wasn't the only one affected by the scent of the royal jelly. It's likely that all sorts of monsters are nearby, and at this point, they've already reached the outskirts of the city where the shopping mall is located. Noticing that the girl didn't seem to be in the best condition, Yu suggests they take a quick break before continuing. Returning to the previous conversation, the girl asks if he had any personal training when he was younger. Once again, Yu responds that he didn't, that he only watched someone train and managed to mimic that person's movements. However, because he was trying to be stealthy and not be noticed by this person, he only learned a few specific moves. Since he doesn't get asked this question often, he wonders why the girl is so curious about it. Instead of answering, Jin becomes extremely frustrated, stating that after all this, she really doesn't like him. Suddenly, the young woman throws something at Jerryong, who quickly catches it, not understanding what it is. Upon examining it, he realizes it's a stamina vial, which is extremely expensive. Seeing this, Yu asks if she's really going to give it to him for free. Jin urges the boy to drink the liquid because he probably wasn't in his original condition due to exhaustion. However, the boy points out that Jin just said she didn't like him but then gave him a gift, so she wasn't keeping her word. But to the girl's surprise, the boy begins to pocket the vial, and Sarum asks why he's doing that. Jerryong responds that he won't drink it because he could sell it later, leaving Sarum even more furious. She starts arguing with Jerryong, saying that it's worth a lot and that he should just take it. Still, the boy explains that he knows the value of the item and that if he sold it on the black market, he would get a good amount of money. The girl mentally curses the boy, thinking he's strange and extremely weird, but he's all she has. Changing his mind, Jerryong says that since she doesn't need to rest after drinking the vial, they should continue their adventure, and so they do. Noticing that the girl is still a bit distracted, reflecting on everything, the boy thinks that rich kids are extremely strange and don't care much about money. Afterward, the two approach the mall, and Jerryong comments that Jin already knew this, but they should go over the plan one more time to be sure. Yu states that their goal isn't to hunt any monsters, but to grab what they need and leave immediately. He adds that no matter how many monsters are inside, she should always follow his instructions and keep her composure despite everything. Finally, Jerryong says he's sure the girl has learned a lot, but his specialty is survival, and she just needs to trust him. However, for some reason, Jin is acting strangely, unable to identify the cause of the weird sensation she's feeling. Last semester, Jin was a stranger at the Warrior Academy, unrecognized by others and often excluded. However, this was the first time she ventured into danger with a companion who didn't belittle her, and as Jaeryong stands up, he declares that they should get moving. The girl remains a bit apprehensive, knowing she's about to face imminent danger. The two of them are now standing in front of an old shopping mall, which is completely overrun by vegetation. Inside, everything is dark and ruined, with the forest and trees having completely taken over the place. But something happens that frightens not only Jin but also Jaeryong, putting both of them on high alert. An overwhelming pressure begins to envelop the two of them, and Jin asks what it is, but even Jaeryong doesn't know as he has never encountered anything like it in his life. Looking ahead, they both notice several mutilated monster corpses, and whoever did that was incredibly powerful. Humans are beings capable of being braver than they imagine, and if they are properly motivated, they can withstand any situation. The only obstacle to this are events that fall outside the scope of the initial plan. Those monsters are not from this area, they are dangerous even for professional explorers. Seeing the carnage, they can't even imagine what could be there. The boy tells her not to lose focus. There's something very dangerous there, and it's not as if she didn't know that. She was just surprised because the scene is scarier than she imagined, but so far, nothing has changed. As soon as he finished speaking, she saw something in the shadows. There was a silhouette moving. Upon seeing this, the boy drew his spear. The creature stood up. It was a slasher lip with a danger level between 2 and 3 stars. Without wasting time, he charged towards the creature. Its mouth started to open, revealing something. It was a huge tongue, now heading towards the boy. Quickly, he managed to defend himself from the attack using his staff. However, he felt that something was different. The creature had managed to grab his weapon with its tongue. Taking advantage of the contact between them, it retracted its limb. With the force exerted, he ended up being pulled along with the staff. Before getting closer to the creature, he'd let go of it. If he hadn't done that, he would have been in its jaws. From above, safely, he looked at the monster again. Leaving his position, he prepared to land a kick. The attack was accurate. He succeeded. From a distance, the girl watched attentively, waiting for the right time to strike. Calmly, he picked up the staff from the ground. That was terrifying for her, and she hadn't expected that creature to still be alive when they arrived, but its survival ability is high. But the boy said that it wasn't just that. He had kept it alive longer on purpose. In case anyone arrives there, that will serve as a warning, as that creature tends to scream to call its allies whenever it feels its life is in danger. The girl didn't understand and wanted to know who he wanted to warn with the alarm. It was for himself, because he couldn't just sit around waiting. Another figure appeared, saying he had a lot to clean up and that after that he ended up feeling a bit exhausted. The girl knew this was another explorer. The boy was very apprehensive, and she wanted to know if they knew each other. The one who had arrived said that this wasn't very normal. These two were too new to be smugglers. Looking more closely at them, he saw a crest on the girl's clothing. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared. Now he was on the ground in front of them, asking if they were from the warrior school. Answering the question, the girl said they were. If that's the case, he didn't even know what kind of team they were, but it's a pity, because they were going to end up dying in that place. Hearing this, the girl was terrified. The boy asked why she was paying attention to those words. That person wasn't a normal explorer, as she should have guessed. He was a villain who had come to kill him and steal the royal jelly. Then he said he must not have contact with his commissioner and shouldn't touch his things without authorization. But he said he only had to deal with the consequences of his actions if caught, and that so far he'd been very lucky. He had heard that his companion was smuggling a highly valuable item. The plan was to ambush him along the way, but things ended up happening differently. He failed the task of having to exterminate them. He confirmed that he had entered there, but still hadn't managed to find him. But he imagines that he must be hiding somewhere smugglers use. Hearing this, the boy realized that this was why contact had been cut off at the smuggling center and not because of the wasp's venom. It was all the work of the guy who had just appeared. Even without having started fighting, Jaeryong could already sense the situation. That opponent would be tough, and he even suggested that he could provide a painless death if they cooperated. This man was certainly ranked higher than the weirdo they encountered earlier. Jaeryong told the girl to find the coins and run because he would buy them some time. With the deeds of that guy, there shouldn't be too many monsters left and she should run fast. While he was still talking to her, the weirdo had started his attack. Even though it had been abnormally fast, his sword missed the target. Now the boy reinforced the command for her to flee and stop being stupid. For them to make money, it was necessary for her to be okay. Seeing her leave, the weirdo got upset. Furious, he said that wasn't a wise decision. Working together until now has increased their chances of survival. But the boy wasn't thinking about that right now. Poised, he began to channel his power. In his eyes, there was only focus and determination. His staff was wielded with mastery and violence. This scared the weirdo, who realized his movements had been telegraphed. Now something was headed towards his face. It was the sole of Jaeryong's foot, which had stomped his face furiously. The weirdo's body flew from the impact. But the boy knew that things weren't over yet. He heard the weirdo say he was surprised by what had happened. Indeed, he had underestimated them for being young, but now he would use his equipment. Even though he was young, he was better than the average professional, so the weirdo would have to get more serious. Then he told him not to be scared, as it would be quick. This was Yang Dogyan, a gold-class adventurer. The ground was cracked with multiple fissures. The kettle had been heated and someone said that wasn't bad at all. In fact, his instant noodles were very good. Looking at the bald man, he offered him some, but he declined. He should at least sit down, as it would take a while for the guy to wake up from his beauty sleep. The bald man was furious, as he paid a lot of money to the guy who was sleeping in the middle of the job. He walked around arrogantly, saying he had been an adventurer. The other man told him not to be so hard on him. He didn't lose because he was bad, he lost because he needed to. What people ignore is that adventurers don't just fight humans. That guy must have been trained in hunting and exploring, not in needing to fight another person. Not being used to it, it's expected that he would lose to a smuggler. The bald man was outraged and said that even among adventurers, he had heard different things. And indeed, among them, there are those who fight a lot with each other. The better they get, the greater the rewards, and fights become inevitable. Even companions end up giving in to greed and betraying their colleagues. Hearing that, the bald man didn't want to believe that they killed each other. But there's no one to stop them, not to mention that there are no rules inside the dungeons. You just say a monster killed him, it doesn't even require an alibi. In fact, the higher their rank, the more they need to be prepared to fight others. But things aren't that simple. The sleeper's class wasn't high enough, which is why he's on the ground now. Attacking a companion, that's cute. And if he got caught, it means a peaceful fight happened outside the dungeon. It was certainly a discussion without equipment, but the bald man didn't know what equipment was. It's the weapons and armor that the adventurer takes to the dungeon, even if it's insignificant. With them, even the sleeper could have put up more of a fight. They're strong enough to make a difference. Equipment is half of an adventurer's combatability. He knew the weirdo hadn't dodged his attack. That blow was accurate and forceful, hitting him squarely. The blade has high defense. While thinking, the weirdo told him not to get distracted. Faced with the imminent blow, he blocked the strike with his staff. Being distracted is not very respectful on his part, neither to his opponent nor to his own life, which could end in the blink of an eye. Taking advantage of the moment, he kicked the boy in the stomach. The blow was very strong, and he was thrown several meters. Before crashing into something, he stopped his advance by planting his feet on the ground. As soon as he stopped, the weirdo was already on top of him once again, and delivered several slashes with his blade. Unable to block all of them, some small cuts found their way to his body. A small wound appeared on his cheek. The weirdo was now very confident and taunted him, telling him to fight like before if he was capable. That was impossible. The shadow jacket was an S-rank armor and the weirdo was wearing one. It uses the user's blood to increase defense against physical damage as well as boost strength. That weirdo, at this very moment, was using berserker combat. It would be hard to find openings, but not impossible. However, if he attempted a poorly planned counterattack, he would die without a doubt. The battle continued and the weirdo was out of control. A quick slash was made at abdomen height. This caused the boy to panic, and the weirdo said he had fallen for his feet. Even so, he had lasted a long time. However, that wasn't what he expected to see. The boy asked him if today was some special day, taking off the jacket he was wearing. He stood up and said that he really liked the weirdo's jacket. Despite everything, that guy wasn't as strong as he had imagined. He had been scared because the guy had a huge aura, but if he didn't do more than that against an unequipped student, he must be a mediocre fighter who relies on it. If the boy had a jacket like that, hearing these words hit the weirdo's ego hard. He started screaming uncontrollably and said the boy would pay for his insolence. Jerryong knew that the one who needed to hurry was not him. His opponent had to win the fight, find Serum, and finish her off. The advantage was his if he kept dragging out the fight. This would make the weirdo impatient, and Jerryong was well aware of that. His focus and concentration were entirely on that goal. The weirdo advanced furiously to finish the battle. In front of him, the boy prepared to defend himself. The clash between the weapons was powerful, emanating aura from both. When he was just a little kid, he learned this just by watching. This was the second technique. A vortex of blue aura emerged between them. His strength wasn't enough for this, so he needed the enemy's strength to use it against him and inflict an attack he wouldn't be able to do on his own. The name of this technique, which he hadn't even perfected yet, is Swell, and its effect is devastating. That single blow had been extremely powerful. The explosion created by the impact was enormous. He now supported his staff on the ground. His insides were injured. The technique had taken a high toll. He hadn't imagined he would use that in a real fight. It hadn't even crossed his mind. And to think that a professional adventurer would be someone who only attacked head-on and nothing more. He invited the weirdo to give up as his time was up. Drawing a dagger, he told the boy to shut his mouth. His hands were trembling, as if they were afraid. Unexpectedly, he stabbed his own chest with it. The boy hadn't expected that. But the weirdo said that no matter what happened, he would make sure of one thing: killing that brat. On the 5th floor of the department store, something was happening. Serum seemed to have reached her destination. She had come across a box. Then she placed her hand on the blue circle. The box confirmed her identification number and her identity. Now that she had found it, all she had to do was return. Suddenly, she felt something different in the air. She looked back to observe. She remembered what Jirion had told her to run away. Because she needed to be okay, that was the only way they would get money. Now she was thinking that nothing would change even if she fled. The effort to believe in those words was enormous. In her mind, only the weirdo's face appeared. Surely he wouldn't fight if he didn't know a way to escape. Now she contemplated the choices she could make. The the weirdo used to enjoy bullying at school. It was one of his favorite pastimes. Indeed, he was a genius. Since childhood, he had felt that everything in his life would be easy, because he was obviously very talented. Recognition from adults was merely a consequence, just like being the dominant figure among his peers. But there was a complication at that time, a goal he hadn't achieved. He had been rejected by the warrior school. As consolation, he believed that they made political decisions favoring money over talent. For him, it was the only possible explanation, because if it were based on talent and skill alone, there was no way he wouldn't have been accepted there. In a test of perseverance, he had ranked first. Compared to the average young person, he wasn't just a genius, he was well above them. Once again, he had ranked highly, something that didn't even surprise his classmates. But he liked knowing that he had become a topic of conversation. Now they were facing the last task before graduation. After the graduation ceremony, someone appeared. The headmaster congratulated him and said he would be an excellent adventurer. As advice, he told him not to become conceited and to always keep moving forward. Listening to this, he only thought that in front of him was trash who had retired early and now had a mediocre job. He was determined to rub it in his face that he would reach a place in life that people like the headmaster could only dream of. Now he was lying on the dungeon floor, terrified. The one who rescued him said he had come quickly because he thought the situation was dangerous, but he hadn't expected it to be such a weak monster. That very monster had killed his entire team without difficulty. They weren't a match for reality. The adventurer looked at him with a gaze that was familiar to him. It was the same one he used to give to other people. It was at that moment that he realized the old man's words weren't advice. Those were words of comfort about his future. He wasn't one of the chosen. He was just better than the average person. The mediocre looked up to him, but he was only slightly better than them. That jacket was made entirely from a living vampire, and he allowed all his blood to flow to his heart. That's the price for him to kill the boy. In response, he asked if he was sure about that because this little trick seemed like it would give him a hangover. But the weirdo advanced without hesitation. The force of the impact was violent. Despite the change, his speed hadn't increased much. Just his appearance, which was horrifying. The attacks were strong and unpredictable. To the boy's surprise, the weirdo's arm was now stretching. Of all the unexpected things that had happened that day, this was yet another one. Blood dripped onto the ground. The weirdo looked at his victim, who was panting. His stance was defensive, but he was worn out. Somehow, he had managed to block the attack. Indeed, good reaction speed and plenty of talent. The weirdo wanted to know why he had become a smuggler, but the boy didn't understand the question. Opening something with his mouth, he asked what was with that sudden compliment. Because whatever he did with his life wasn't his business. Regardless of the answer, the weirdo thanked him. Thanks to the boy, now he would be able to step on a talented person. Excited, he prepared to fulfill a dream. However, the boy wasn't going to let that happen so easily. Despite the damage he had taken, his body moved without any problem. Seeing this, the weirdo became even more excited and wanted him to show even more talent. The boy knew that this horrible form couldn't be maintained for long. If his fuel was blood, it was obvious that there would be a limit someday. So he could provoke him to use even more blood and force him to use the needle. But the weirdo was already aware of what could happen. Now it was too late for the boy. The weirdo was about to land another blow. Unexpectedly, a blazing explosion occurred on his shoulder. The boy looked to the side to see what happened. His friend had returned to help him. Smiling at her, he hadn't imagined that would happen. Really, she never listens to anything he says. That behavior of hers is very touching at times. With the weirdo within range of his staff, he struck him once again. The place was now filled with rubble. The emptiness was filled only by a thin mist. On the ground lay the weirdo's body, though they still didn't know if he was truly dead. But the boy didn't think that had been enough for that outcome and told them not to worry about it. With a picture of him, he said he certainly wouldn't attempt revenge or he might risk his entire career. He was sure that would be enough for now. Picking up his staff from the ground, he asked if she had already forgotten. He had saved her life, so she owed him one. That makes 2 times now. Once at the beginning and the second when she decided to follow him. But since he's a generous person, he'll only count it as 1. Annoyed, the girl wanted to know if it hurt him to say sorry. In the building's parking lot, the destruction was complete. From a hole in the ground, golden light emanated. They looked at it and the light as well. Surely it must be something interesting. Descending the stairs, they got closer and closer to the source of the glow. As they approached, they began to smell something sweet in the air. Near the bottom of the staircase, they could observe better. There was a body on the ground and in its lap a briefcase. Apparently, the golden glow they had seen from outside was coming from it. He cautiously approached the body. In front of it, he closed his eyes as if paying respects. Looking at the girl, he said he had already warned her about the things she would see, but she had followed him anyway. Since they were already there, they decided to take a look inside the briefcase. Placing his hands on it, he began to open it. The smell they were experiencing was beyond their ability to describe. Sweet and captivating, it almost invited those who smelled it to forget what they were thinking. Exposed like that, it was surely attracting monsters to the place. Looking at the object beside it, he wondered if there was royal jelly in that bag too. His gut told him they should leave soon because weird things might happen if they stayed too long. As they exited, they quickly made it to the first floor. The weirdo's body was no longer there. If alive, he must have escaped. A scream echoed, startling her, saying they should wait for what was to come. He said he remembered each of their faces well, and from then on, he would do everything possible to destroy them. They'll make sure they regret what was done to him that day. The weirdo runs with hatred in his eyes, but soon realizes that life is full of surprises. In front of him is a monster so hungry it has already leaped toward him with its mouth wide open. This wasn't the end he had expected to meet. With no way to react, he ended up becoming monster food. His revenge would have to wait for another life, maybe if he's reborn an ice guy. Not even the kids who had spared him expected his karma to be paid so quickly. Perhaps it would be better for them to leave through the back door. Outside, the sun begins to set on the horizon. After walking for a while, he imagines they must be safe now. Looking at the girl, he asked about her test, but it seems she still has time. Then he extended his hand to say goodbye, saying it was great to have met her. Even though it had been good, both had now finished their purposes together. On her face was a sincere smile about it. They shook hands, both content with what they had accomplished. As they were leaving, he reminded her about secrecy and payment, and to be careful in life in case she didn't want to see him again. But there was something she wanted to say. She wanted to know if it was okay for them to see each other again. On the ground were discarded wrappers. Cabalinho looked to the side, interested. The boy had returned, and from his torn clothes, it seemed he had had quite a bit of fun. Now they wanted to take a look inside the briefcase as well. The characteristic glow began to emerge. It would be insane if that were released to the public. It would be enough to buy a few buildings. He congratulated the boy on the job and said he would send the payment soon. Smoking his cigarette, he looked at him once again. Jerryong seemed strange, so Cabalinho wanted to know if everything was okay with him. He wanted to know if it was because of the adventurer who died while fighting him, but he died afterward, and it wasn't a situation he should feel remorse about. Cabalinho asked if anything else had happened while he was there. The boy dodged the question, saying it was nothing and that he should stop asking. Looking at the briefcase, he asked if he could take what was left as it didn't seem to be royal jelly. Of course, all items that weren't part of the objective belonged to the smuggler. That was the rule. He wanted to know who the child that would eat it was. It could bring the dead back, but it had another use besides that. It could increase each individual's limits, boosting their potential talent. There wasn't much clarity on it, but it only worked on those who hadn't reached adulthood, so they wouldn't give it to someone for whom it wouldn't work. It was surely for someone from the warrior school. Jerryong said he was leaving and Cabalinho wished him good luck. He sent a message to give to her father to say hello, and the boy said he would if he got the chance. Recently, he hadn't been doing very well. Outside, he looked at the color of the twilight sky and thought about the warrior school. He remembered what the girl had said to him. Directly, he wanted to know if she was interested in him, but she said she wasn't joking. There was an admission exam in the winter. They accepted only a few people, but he had a good chance of getting in. Looking at him, she emphasized that he should try. No adventurer can explore a dungeon alone, no matter how skilled they are. Facing the unreal situations of dungeons alone is practically impossible. That's why a team is necessary. Different people with different talents combine their abilities to overcome weaknesses and become stronger. That's how dungeons are explored. This school has political factions, and he wanted to know if they fought against each other. If it were that simple, they wouldn't have to worry about them. In their class, there were two factions. The two in the top three led the factions. Hearing this, he wanted to know if she belonged to one and found out that she hadn't joined them. And about the situation, the teachers don't interfere, because it's the students' responsibility to find their team. She knew he was implying that this happened because she wasn't that skilled, and she also knew she wouldn't be a top student. Even so, she should manage to find a team. Even those not in factions could do it, and one of the faction leaders didn't like her. It wasn't explicit, but it was noticeable. Behind her back, she intentionally isolated her from the others. Jeryeon wanted to know if she had stolen that girl's boyfriend, and of course, that wasn't the reason. In any case, she had survived alone so far, but wouldn't be able to do so in the upcoming years. That's why she wanted to hire Jeryeon. With his ability, or rather with him alone, she might have a chance to survive. Thinking about this, she looked at the medicines on the counter. Indeed, she's quite a funny girl. The girl sighed, exhausted, having had a turbulent day. She finally arrived where she wanted and announced her presence. She's at the dungeon barrier in Gangnam at the 12th location. Meanwhile, she thought about the boy she had met. As she was leaving, he said he had listened well to what she said and wished her good luck. In her mind, she imagined he wouldn't talk to her about the subject. While she was thinking, someone said she wasn't late. It was Kang, one of her instructors responsible for hand-to-hand combat training. She wanted to know if something had happened since she still had time, and he said there had been a problem. Monsters not common in certain areas had been seen. There were no casualties, but some students said completing the test was impossible and requested help. Those students were in the same area where she had retrieved the coin. Looking at her, he wanted to know if she had any trouble with the task. Anxiously, she said she hadn't. He listened without reacting and didn't question her. But he ordered her to stay behind him, and the girl felt a monster's presence there. She turned to him and became even more frightened. Another one, like the one that ate the weirdo, but even larger. A titan ape in that area was quite unusual, since they don't live anywhere nearby. Maybe it had been attracted by something, and the girl began to imagine what it could have been. It was certainly the smell she had sensed earlier. The instructor told Serum once again to stay behind him, and she apologized. That monster was completely focused on eating them. All the instructors at this school were once adventurers. Some left the profession due to the lingering effects of injuries sustained throughout their lives. That's what people on the outside think about them. A single punch from that instructor was devastating. The force was so immense that the Titan was being subdued. Fire began to rise rapidly up his arm. As soon as it reached the head, it was obliterated. The monster's lifeless body fell to the ground. These instructors, when they were younger, earned the title of rankers. Even in death, the monster's head kept exploding. His prosthetic had been destroyed, and he said the girl was lucky he was there, because this could have ended in a very dangerous way. Even so, he rested his hand on her shoulder. It's very good to know she's safe. Now it's time to return to a safe place. People sometimes ignore the fact that the instructors there are also warriors. Back at school, they asked about the students who requested rescue. Those students would have to retake the test, which was very fortunate. He said the people who went there were just weaklings. As they talked, he said one of the weaklings was arriving. Looking at her, the one-armed man told her to go in and wait. He would confirm that everyone was there and she was to check the numbers and put on the uniform. Indeed, she felt much more relieved now. A girl said she had told her she would be fine. At least her tactic was quick. This fake person was Anisha, and she said she was very worried about her classmate. In response, she said she didn't imagine she would be worried. Continuing with the cynicism, she said it wasn't for her, that it was her sister saying those things. It all started 6 years ago. Zeke, Sarum's uncle, said she needed to increase her output. She should pay attention and stay focused. But that required too much effort from her. He finished the exercise, said that was enough, and that at least she had improved since the last time. But it was only a little. On the other side, she heard someone cheering. Exhausted, she looked to see what was happening. It was her sister, showing much more talent. Anisha mastered that technique with ease. Not only did she not resemble a hybrid in appearance, but she could use magic with more mastery than many pure bloods. He said her cousin was a genius, and if she wanted to stay on this path, she would always remain in her shadow. And being constantly compared should be the least of her worries. He also suggested she be cautious. The girl seemed sadistic. Still cynical, she said she didn't understand. Why did no one want to be on the same team as her? With the ability she had, then she interrupted her and said that if she was curious, she should form a team with her. She said she couldn't, as they both had the same role, dealing magical damage from a distance. It didn't make sense for two people to have the same task. This is a situation that others should deal with, not her. But even so, she shouldn't worry, because she's sure there will be another test. So she said she doesn't care about the test because she already passed. Anisha says she's impressed and that her sister must have done her best, but she advised her not to try too hard. After all, she's the one who has to inherit the company anyway. This brief interaction left her deeply irritated. What Anisha really wants is for her to stop trying. It's already nighttime and the lights are visible in the building. The door suddenly opens. Jaerong is very agitated now. The patient's guardian has arrived and Jaerong wants to know if something has gone wrong. Unfortunately, his father has had a relapse. The doctors don't know how else to explain it. This patient has an extremely rare condition, possibly the only person in the world with it. There's no record in medical literature of anyone else who has been poisoned by dragon's blood and survived. Jaerong knows the best they can do is palliative care to reduce his father's pain, nothing more. But that's not the only problem. The ingredients for the painkillers are also an issue. The milk of an extremely dangerous monster is the only thing that can relieve the pain at this stage. The Flying Tiger, a 5-star danger level monster. He says he has money, but the doctor was categorical in stating that the problem isn't the money. There's a new potion popular among adventurers, which increases strength and endurance for a long time, even in small doses. One of its ingredients is the milk of this beast. This was an ingredient that could once be bought with money, as it was considered useless, though valuable. But things have changed, and now companies and adventurers are buying large quantities of it. Jaerong is furious that they don't even have a little to save a person who's dying. But the doctor said that's not the issue. The amount he needs is the same as what's used to make 10 of those potions. If there were enough patients who needed it, the government might intervene. But since there's only one in the entire world, that's not going to happen because there's no public health system like the SUS in Korea. They will do what they can, but without the ingredient, there's not much that can be done. After this devastating news, he sits on a park bench, deep in thought. Life seems to be getting more and more complicated. He took out his phone to call someone. It was the girl he met earlier he was calling. He asked if it was too late to call, but she said it was fine. Directly, he said that he doesn't have many options left besides accepting her offer. Hearing this, she wanted to know if he had any conditions. After listening, she said she could take a look and that things might work out that way. He's still incredulous that she can pull this off, but she said yes. It's her company that makes that potion, and since he doesn't need much, it's an achievable request. He hadn't expected to hear that, but he's happy. If that's the case, it seems they have a verbal agreement. She reminded him that he needs to prepare for the admission exam. There's nothing to lose by preparing ahead of time. The next day, he goes to the company's headquarters building. She said he had arrived early. As he approached, she asked how he was feeling, and he said he was fine. Jae-rong wanted to know what they were going to do there. She said they were going to measure his potential. The world has changed a lot, and before that, an ordinary human could only reach level D. Those who reached level C were basically geniuses. Anything above B is beyond human. Excluding magic, you need to be at least C in 5 categories to become an explorer. To go to the warrior school, you need to be B in at least 3 of them. Jae-rong wanted to know if they were just going to do a physical test on him. They do that with children, but after puberty, it's a bit more complex. He wanted to know what made it more complex. Dressed in an exotic suit, he found out why it got more complicated. It should have clicked when she asked him how he was feeling. In front of him was a battle robot. Since they were there, he was interested in doing his best because he was curious to find out what his potential was. Jae-rong prepared to fight the robot. A blue light began to emerge from the dummy, just as smoke started to come out of it. The girl watched, impressed by this start. With her was another woman who said he was brave. Most people get scared of the golem. This is Jung, a golem specialist, and she's curious about the determination of the boy who wants to transfer. She smiles discreetly as she knows that's not quite the case, placing her cup on the table after drinking her coffee. It was time to begin the aptitude test. The golem's pieces start moving. It prepares to attack the person in front of it. Jae-rong isn't intimidated by it at all. This test usually takes place between the 6th and 7th year, and the suit is used to ensure the data is collected with precision. This way, the body can be pushed to its limit in several areas. But it's difficult to measure whether they're truly talented, or if they've simply trained for a long time. She knows Jae-rong is physically gifted. It won't be easy to push him to his limit. Even so, he should be tired by now. The other woman calls out to Sarum. She wants to confirm if this boy really failed the admission to a specialized school, because she's very curious now. So talented, he must have failed something truly difficult. Even with reduced difficulty, that model is used to train professionals. With a few dodges, he identified a pattern and found an opening to strike. He's simply insane with his abilities. Just with his senses, he's already better than the average professional. Sarum wants to know the result of the measurement. That's a bit more complicated, because he clearly hasn't reached his limit yet. It's necessary to increase the difficulty of the test, but it doesn't make sense to increase the difficulty by just 1 or 2 levels. It needs to be pushed to full strength, and she wants to know if Sarum is aware of the risks. It's a crime to do this with unregistered professionals, but if they don't, there's no way to know his limits. She tries to think of a possibility. As she enters the room, someone says she isn't paid to do this kind of thing. She turns, startled to see who just arrived. It's the director, Zeke, who said the lab can't be used without reporting the reason. Sarum sees her uncle. They hadn't expected him to come here on a Sunday. He said he hopes there's a reason she's willing to get arrested for. Sarum says she's solely responsible as it was her who requested this. Zeke wants to know if it was really her, or if it's just an excuse to cover for her employee. Sarum shouldn't confuse herself. This place belongs to her father, not her. There's nothing she can do to take responsibility for herself. The rumors about the director are indeed true. He's her maternal uncle and has always been cold towards her, even though she's done nothing wrong. It's the weekend, and other adventurers with ties to the company also use this place. He was about to continue his lecture, but Jae-rong spoke through the intercom. He wanted to know if there was a problem up there. Zeke wants to know who that is and if he's on her level. The employee says he's a friend of Sarum's. She explained that he had failed admission exams and lost his potential registration, which is why he was here. Since it's costly, she just wanted to help a friend who couldn't afford it. Zeke looked at the golem, which seemed to have taken a beating. Thinking about what he just saw, he said he would handle this. The employee wanted to know what he meant by that. He heard that the golem wasn't enough and couldn't be taken out of safe mode, so he's going to go down and face this friend himself. Jae-rong still doesn't know if everything is okay. It's not uncommon for adventurers to get into conflicts with each other when it's difficult to find someone's limits. And in this particular case, the opponent is several levels above the one taking the test. Zeke said he'd skip the introduction. Because he doesn't have much time to spare, Jae-rong quickly realized that guy is definitely not normal. He has no idea who he's about to face, but his senses immediately went on high alert. Zeke told him to do his best. The weirdo from before had been the first person he fought. No matter how he looked at him, he felt he wasn't a beatable opponent. Hearing the order to attack, he hesitated. He didn't need to worry about Zeke's safety, so Jae-rong began planning his attack. He started channeling his aura. Finally, he initiated his charge. Zeke stood still, waiting for contact. Despite appearances, Zeke is the 7th strongest ranker in all of Korea, a white-class adventurer. Jae-rong couldn't identify a single opening, but he won't give up. He's going to create the opportunity. His combat strategy is simple. As soon as his opponent dodges, he will execute a single attack from behind. To do that, he'll use the opening created by the dodge. His staff was blocked with a single hand. That wasn't the result he was aiming for. Zeke is really strong. Zeke remarked that this kid is even more reckless than he had initially imagined. With Jae-rong in front of him, Zeke struck him with a single kick. Jae-rong felt the impact, which was brutal. His body was hurled toward the wall. However, he can't understand one thing: whether he attacked that way because he knew it was a simulation or if he actually thought it would work. It doesn't matter what the answer is. The choice is foolish in both cases. With his foot, Zeke kicked the staff back into his hands. Even though Jaerong is still conscious, he had lost the only weapon he had. This made Jaerong more alert, and it made sense. Then Zeke returned the staff to him. So far, Zeke had been lenient with the boy's foolish choices. One more mistake, and Zeke promised he would make sure Jaerong regretted ever becoming an adventurer. He spread his feet, assuming an offensive stance. Jaerong doesn't know exactly why, but he senses that Zeke holds some kind of grudge against him, though he won't take it personally. He moved forward again to attack. Zeke assumed that since the approach was similar to the previous one, it would follow the same pattern. However, Jaerong planted one of his feet firmly on the ground. That made Zeke extremely alert. Before him, 2 attacks were coming his way. A ranged attack to catch him off guard afterward. Still not enough. Jaerong said that this guy probably isn't satisfied yet, which is good, because he had just begun. His staff was now glowing with a bright blue light. He prepared to execute a powerful attack. Zeke still didn't know what to expect from the boy. Once again, a series of attacks came his way. Exhaling some of his aura, Zeke said it wasn't bad at all. He clenched his fists tightly. Poised, he managed to defend against all the incoming attacks. From above, the employee observed the fight, thinking it looked like a battle between 2 professionals, given the technical level of the fight. It's hard to believe that this boy hadn't been accepted into any school yet. To be honest, it's not like he's perfect at everything. Sarum wanted to know what she meant by that. He has a weakness that hinders him a lot. In that same aspect, she said, Sarum is far superior to him, and Sarum wondered what that could be, because apparently he's fighting Zeke on equal footing. Now she's curious to know what's wrong with him. Jaerong narrowly avoided a blow. That punch nearly hit his unprotected face. The employee started watching the fight with concern. Jaerong had lost any advantage and was being struck repeatedly. He was in agony, unable to react quickly enough to block the attacks, but he mustered all his determination to fight back. He swung his staff in a way that pushed his opponent back. Zeke commented that Jaerong managed to maintain control of the staff at the last moment. That was certainly true. Zeke's fists sunk into the boy's abdomen. Once again, Jaerong was thrown towards the wall. The director is truly exceptional, and she knows he's still holding back. Sarum watches the fight closely. Zeke tells Jaerong not to dwell on defeat, as it would have happened either way. But his journey to accepting defeat is pitiful. Jaerong lacks basic training. This is the same opinion the employee has about him. His talent and reflexes are indeed exceptional, but the fundamentals are missing. It's as if he's never trained in his life. Shigen feels disappointed, thinking that if he had been trained in the basics, his potential would have been immense. Sarum remembered that Jaerong had told her he had never been taught by anyone. Zeke said he had seen many people like him. Even though they're talented, they don't dedicate themselves to refining what they already possess, but Sarum knows that's not the case with him. Zeke gave him some credit for that. However, he strongly suggested that Jaerong give up. Someone as weak as him could end up dead if he relies only on talent. Standing up, Jaerong said that Zeke has no idea about something. He's been talking so much nonsense, it's like he hates him for thinking he's lazy. Zeke was surprised because he had intended for his last strike to end the fight. Jaerong said he doesn't care about the results but wants to go for one more round, because now he'll show him the result of his hard work. The employee asked what was going on with them. She found it amusing that they wanted to continue fighting, but they already had enough data to calculate his potential. Even Sarum tried to intervene, saying it wasn't necessary to keep going. He could stop now and check his results. Zeke says that he doesn't know what he intends to do, but no matter what he does, the result will always be the same. He even thinks that the boy wants words of affirmation from him. To be frank, that's not quite what he's seeking. Jaerong is really irritated, and all he wants right now is to beat up this arrogant elf. With no one to teach him, he had to learn everything from scratch in his own way. Even so, things weren't that bad. He really has a natural talent. That's how he managed to fill the gaps that basic training would have taught him. Besides, he has vast field experience. That made him capable of doing whatever he wanted. Exceptional progress, but it never crossed his mind that he was better than the others. In fact, he was often disappointed by the frauds who, in the end, were weaker than him. But that elf over there is different from everyone else. Zeke now wants to hit him so hard that the boy won't even feel anger. He's a monster beyond Jaerong's reach. Seeing the aura being exhaled, he notices something. Now he's really being taken seriously by the elf. When faced with someone he considered a real challenge, his blood started boiling without him noticing. Watching the scene, the employee says this is madness and doesn't know why the director is like that too. Sarum noticed that his base is different from before. His posture and weight distribution are a little more aggressive. Now they are 2 completely different people from before. Jaerong calmly sighs after preparing himself. He initiated his attack. This time things would be different. He executes his first strike, which is intense. Even though Zeke dodged, his cheek was superficially cut. Not even the employee can believe what she's seeing. Jaerong is really attacking in a different way. However, even so, Zeke continues to dodge everything. Compared to before, they are still simple and rough movements, but there are no more openings. She doesn't know who taught him, but that is simply phenomenal. All Jaerong wants now is to beat this elf. He remembers who he used to observe when he was a child. Everything that man did, he imitated as best as he could. Tired of dodging, Zeke catches the staff with one of his hands and begins his counterattack. which the boy defends. When he was just a little Jaerong, he happily imitated. Now he's facing the strongest opponent he's ever encountered, so he definitely wants to beat him up too. That man found the little child's dedication interesting. This time, Zeke landed a hit. He looked somewhat intrigued by that tiny being. Zeke missed. Jaerong had narrowly dodged the attack. The little boy seemed quite interested in it. Now he wields his staff to deliver a counterattack. He looks eagerly to see what will happen. Jaerong is fully confident in his abilities. The man just patted his little head and looked at him full of admiration. That attack would have been devastating if it had hit. Zeke had to jump. As soon as he lands, there will be an opening. He knows that if Jaerong strikes, he won't be able to dodge. But he's determined to give him what he's been seeking in this fight. Since he can't dodge, he goes straight for the boy. They watch, too impressed with what's happening. Smoke rises in the arena. That was the final blow. If he hadn't used this bizarre staff technique, he would certainly have won if he had continued. Zeke wants to know if this is a display of pride on his part. Smiling, he says it's not. He simply only knew that much. That's all he had memorized. In the end, he just ended up taking an even worse beating. Even so, that wasn't bad at all. Zeke is not very well liked among his peers because he's annoying. But no one can complain about his actions, because his skills are truly powerful. Extending his hand over Jaerong's face, he prepares to do something. The aura begins to gently increase. In response to his niece's concern, he tells her not to worry. The boy will be fine. He just healed his wounds. He just wanted to confirm with her if the boy's name is Yu Jaerong. Zeke is one of the top 10 rankers in the whole country, and he didn't expect something like this that day. Who would have thought he'd meet the son of that guy here? Zeke is the greatest healer in Korea. The sun finally starts to set. Someone tells Zeke that if he was going to be late, he could have at least sent a message. He could have at least had a coffee and relaxed, and now they'll be late for the briefing again. And every time they're late, people always think it's his fault. But Zeke says something happened, and it took longer than expected. The young man says he heard that Zeke was dueling with a boy, but given the delay, he thinks it must have been several. As soon as he looks at him closely, he's surprised. There's a small mark on his cheek. Looking more closely, his surprise grows, piquing Zeke's curiosity. He wants to confirm if that thing on his cheek is really a cut. Impatient, Zeke asks what else it could be if not a cut, but he can't believe it. So this boy must be ready to go to school, and he must be 16, but Zeke says he's 17. It seems he'll try to enter the warrior school during the winter admission. Indeed, it exists, but no one has passed in the last 3 years. For sure, he has a chance. Cutting Zeke's cheek is not something easy. This new generation is really coming in more and more terrifying. Zeke says comparing people with elves is disproportionate, and he's sure the boy is no different from the young man. Kang says there must be a difference. He's ranked 19th, a black class explorer, leader of the Nyx attack squad. He believes he has the upper hand over the boy. Both in talent and experience, he's only 21 and graduated from school a year and a half ago. Zeke just sighs after hearing that. He said he hadn't seen that car yet, and the young man said he barely spends his money, so he allows himself certain privileges. Jaerong remains lying on a stretcher. After some time, he finally gets up. Looking at his hands, he notices that all of his wounds have been healed, and besides that, he doesn't feel any pain. The girl says he's finally awake. She wants to know what he was thinking, and if he really thought he could win, but he says that wasn't quite it. He had just been really angry, and it was the other guy who had started it. But even she doesn't understand why her uncle would want to fight the boy, and Jaerong wants to know if they are really related. And indeed they are. He's her uncle on her mother's side. Faced with his silence, she becomes curious. But he just says everything's fine. He said they seem to have a good relationship, which is noticeable by the way he treats her. But she didn't understand where he got that conclusion from. But Jaerong said it's just as he said. You could feel this concern that a stranger might be taking advantage of his niece, and you can't fault him for that. But she says her uncle isn't really that kind of person, and that, in fact, he's very strict. The staff member enters the room as well, noticing that he's already awake. She asks if he feels any pain, but he responds that his body is fine. Indeed, she's sure it would have healed even old injuries. It might not seem like it, but the director is the greatest healer in the country, and that leaves him perplexed. Even being that strong, combat isn't his primary role. Jaerong smiles as he realizes this. In any case, it's a relief that he's okay, and she already has the evaluation results. Handing him the tablet, she showed the information. It's really very good, says Sarum. He's A in stamina and agility, B in strength and endurance, and C in intelligence. Looking at the data, he wants to know if it's really that good. She shouts in frustration for him to shut up, and the staff member wonders if he's really ready to join the school. To be a high-level explorer, you need to have at least some B ratings in your skills. However, it's necessary to have balanced stats. There's no point in being too agile if you lack stamina. Even if you're very strong, all that strength is useless without agility. She says that even normal people have C-ranked abilities, but things change when you have more than one. Having C or higher in strength, stamina, and agility is something one person in 10,000 possesses. If they're B, it's 1 in half a million, and that alone places him among the best explorers. He not only has a B in strength, but A in the other two. Besides being balanced, his stats are way above average. Even though it's his first year, he's going to be on the same level as that monster. Looking at him, she asked if he wants to hear something interesting. The person he had just fought doesn't have a single stat higher than A. Stats are just the total potential. They don't translate to what a person has in practical ability. Even with good stats, the real difference comes from training, and that's not the only variable. There's also what can't be measured, like fighting spirit and field experience. It may seem a bit cruel at first, but she has seen many explorers who have filled those gaps through sheer determination. Sarum blushed because she knew the woman was talking about her. After hearing all that, he thanked her for the story he had heard. In fact, he's not disappointed or anything like that, he just doesn't quite understand it yet. But there's someone he knows, and compared to that person, he's far behind. A staff member was surprised that he knew someone like that. That's not common at all. It must surely be a famous person, and he kind of is, more or less. Sarum says they're done for the day, and they could meet again next week. But since they were there, the staff member suggested they visit the medicine production section. However, the girl is hesitant, unsure if her uncle would be upset with this decision. But the staff member said the director had already authorized it. Sarum doesn't believe it and wants to know if he said that before leaving. His words were that as soon as the boy woke up, he should be taken to where the equipment is made, and to tell everyone that the boy is his guest, even to the point of making a weapon that adapts to him, no matter the cost. Sarum could hardly believe it. Quality equipment is the dream of any adventurer, even if he's extremely talented. If the equipment is of low quality, it won't keep up with its user's power. As the skills are perfected, the explorer needs better equipment that can keep up with them. Faced with that, Jaerong can't understand the situation. He doesn't know if he needs equipment now since he's only going to school, but Sarum says it's not what he thinks. The boy assumes that at school, they'll receive equipment for the students. Hearing this, they don't even know what to say. Sarum knows it's all her fault. If it were a normal institution, his assumption would be correct. Each school has its own rules about the equipment that can be used. Jaerong imagined that this is the case with the warrior school, since they have the most resources. Jung says it's not about resources, but that the school has different ideals. There's a difference between talent and skill, and obtaining good equipment is a skill in itself. That's why the school requires students to bring their own equipment. To him, this only benefits those who have resources, and he asked them if being rich is a skill. He's not wrong about that, but it's possible for students to have good equipment even if they don't have any money. Entering this school implies that the student has the potential to be a great explorer with the potential to become a star. That alone can be used as an advantage because there are people who want to invest in that. Students quickly attract the interest of various companies that see business opportunities in them. The offers are incredible since all of them are very large companies. She herself received a scholarship from the Jinsong Group and a guaranteed job until she wanted to retire. Without showing surprise upon hearing this, she finishes by saying that these are the doors that open when you enter this school. What won't be lacking are opportunities for him to prove himself among his peers. However, the first step for him is to pass the test. The transfer exam is more difficult than the admission one, and he needs to prepare. Obtaining equipment is one of the things that need to be done. That's why the director wanted to help him with that. Since she has already passed the details along, he just needs to go to the refinery in the basement. She wished him luck and hoped he could get admitted to the school. Things could have ended badly. Sarum wants to know how, and he says she didn't imagine her uncle would help. The more he hears about the test, the more it seems like people will do anything to pass. That's why she wants to help him, and she's using her own money to do it. Every time she sees that expression on his face, she gets extremely irritated. Even so, it was good to hear that. No matter how much money someone has, it's also important to know who's going to make the equipment. And the equipment production sector of this company is one of the best in the world. Arriving at the forge, he says there shouldn't be much difference between one piece of equipment and another. But what he's seeing makes him think differently. The forge is simply immense, and it used to be a dungeon called the Bubbling Abyss. Sarum wants to know what he thinks of all this. That's not a place where you can simply ask for something to be made. A chill runs down his spine as he stands there. A massive figure is behind them both. On its face, a huge eye glows. The boy immediately turns, ready to react to the situation. The figure says that Zeke woke him up from his weekend nap, and yet he doesn't even personally come to the forge. Jaerong asks if this is a monster, but Sarum says it's not. Actually, he's the head of the equipment production division. In truth, the boy isn't entirely wrong either. He's an ancient titan called Argus, and from a human perspective, he's a monster, but he obtained naturalization in Korea through a special rite. Lighting his cigar, he asks who the human Zeke talked about is. He wants to know if it's this little boy in front of him, or if it's the elf's niece, but she says that the information has already been passed on to him. But he says that digital information is a human thing, and he doesn't care about it. His employees are in charge of that, but today is a day off, and none of them are around. Even so, that's not important at all. Since he was asked to take care of this personally, it's time to get to work. Then he asks if the weapon the boy carries is his main one, and Jaerong says yes. If that's the case, Argus orders him to try to hunt him. Sarum became anxious and wants to know what he intends with this. For his species, this is necessary. Unless the boy proves worthy, he won't put any effort into the task. Even so, Argus says the boy seems different from others he's seen. His eyes are ready and accustomed to hunting, and he has a sense of hostility that can still be refined, and once again, he told the boy to try and give him a beating. Saram remains anxious about the situation, seeing that Jeryeon was preparing himself, and she told Argis that he usually doesn't turn down challenges like that. Immediately, his eye widened. The boy was already engaging in attacking him. The staff is wielded with mastery, striking him with force. Saram watches the beginning of the fight apprehensively. The cigar falls to the ground after the impact. To Argis, that is simply impossible. Without having suffered any damage, he wants to know where the boy got that weapon. That reaction left Jeryeon confused. He was sure it had been clean. Indeed, there are many monsters he couldn't take down with just one blow. But the feeling he had when he struck this one was like hitting a huge wall. It's not just about strength, it was like hitting an inanimate object. Intrigued, he wants to know what kind of monster he just hit. And there's another reason Saram is so worried and distressed. Monsters are given danger classifications designated by stars. 1 star means they are capable of killing humans, and monsters in this range can be defeated by a normal person, as long as they are armed. With 2 stars, the difficulty rises considerably. They can be defeated by trained people equipped with firearms. Things get much harder with 3 stars. They can only be defeated by armed troops with heavy equipment. With 4 stars, the situation becomes catastrophic. Ground troops focus on evacuating civilians and minimizing casualties. After the evacuation, they are destroyed with artillery and bombs. That's the limit of what the military can handle. Anything above 5 stars is beyond modern military capability. Even if they defeat such a monster, it will be at the cost of massive firepower and nearly irreparable destruction. To reduce the damage, elite squads of the best explorers are sent to deal with these monsters. Argus is a 7-star monster, and once again, he asks his question. He wants to know where the boy got that weapon. Jeryeon wants to know if it hurt him more than it should have, and he doesn't understand why there are so many questions. Argus says it's good for the boy to think very carefully about the answer he's going to give, because it was he who made that staff. Hearing that, Jeryeon was surprised. Now irritated, Argus said he would ask only once more. He wants to know why this weapon is in Jeryeon's hands and not in the hands of the person it was made for. If it was made by Argus, that weapon alone is ranked above A, and it should be cataloged in the association, along with the owner's data and exact location. It's not an item a smuggler could easily get their hands on. Saram doesn't want to believe that he might have stolen the item. Jeryeon says he's not going to tell, and besides, he has no reason to answer. Saram says he's being really stupid, and Argus says he understands. And now he will take that into account. Immediately, only one thought was running through his mind. It was death. There was no way to dodge that, and he had no idea how to block the attack. There was no apparent weakness in the hand of that monster. If he tried to absorb the blow, he would end up dead anyway. His only option was the third choice, the last technique he learned by watching his father. The Titan noticed something was happening. Even so, he carried out his attack, striking the ground. When 2 forces collide, the larger and stronger one always wins. But the outcome is different if they are not directly opposing each other. By precisely calculating the angle and position, even though winning wasn't a possibility, it's possible to redirect the resulting force. Saram can't believe he managed to dodge an attack from a 7-star monster. The Titan waits for the next move. His only chance now is to use the needle to strike the monster's single eye. However, before he can even get close, he's caught by the giant's prosthetic hand, which now pulls him closer to its face. He's firmly trapped and can't move. Saram pleads for him to stop, saying the boy may seem suspicious, but she says he still doesn't have the right to attack a human and should be aware of the consequences. Except in dangerous situations, naturalized species cannot attack humans. If that happens, the aggressor loses their rights and is treated as a hostile monster. Releasing the boy, he says she shouldn't worry. He understands that clearly, despite everything. He finally realized why the boy has the weapon he made. That's why Zeke woke him from his weekend nap. Faced with that, he apologized and said the boy has every right to carry that weapon, and that he'll make sure to pay him back for his mistake. Then he noticed something with his single eye. It's been 30 years since he was last hurt by an attack. Saram doesn't know what he's talking about because she didn't understand what happened. He asks if they know why he works for humans now. She thinks it's because he was hunted by the attack squad 30 years ago, but he says that's not it. He's surprised that's the story humans tell, as they weren't even able to touch him. The one who hunted him was a man who did it alone. He was the one who cut off his hand and had the chance to take his life, but chose not to. As he says this, the boy is watching him. Likewise, he looks back at the boy. Argus has always been an incredibly powerful monster. He was ready to fight against that hunter. In his hands was a battle axe. It was the boy's father who hunted him. The ancient titans are the strongest among the giants. They have an unknown life expectancy and fewer than 10 of them are known. Their physical abilities are beyond human comprehension, but they are widely known for their skill in forging equipment, which have special powers or even artifacts. This is a skill they are born with. The closest to this are the dwarves. Unlike the titans, the dwarves chose to coexist with humans. The titans, besides not opting for that, saw humans as unworthy. Something happened 30 years ago during Argus' subjugation. At the door of his forge was an automaton colossus, a 4-star monster. They want to know if the communication channel with the base is still down. All magical communication is cut off. There must be something blocking the signal. Terrified, someone says he's coming, and they should prepare for impact. The colossus attacks the invaders without any mercy. The shield bearer tries to hold back the blow with all his strength. Behind the automaton, the girl prepares to deliver her attack. She needs to seize this opening before it's too late. Her strike is precise, but it's deflected by the helmet. That wasn't the result she was looking for. Her sword was completely ineffective in penetrating the armor's defense. Faced with that, the automaton prepares to retaliate. Then it hits her with its shield. She flies several meters before crashing into the wall of the place. Everything was completely beyond what they had imagined. Yabik's attack squad was among the best in dungeon subjugation. However, in the bubbling abyss, they were completely obliterated. They had already faced 7 colossi in total. Even if they defeat one, another appears right after. If the other team performs the same way they did, it will be the end. The shield bearer ordered his companions to flee, because he knows it's going to be difficult for all of them to leave this place alive. As he speaks, the automaton strikes again with its sword. But the young man reacts quickly with his shield. He managed to defend himself. His ability allows him to consume energy to enhance all his physical attributes. After activation, the user is incapacitated for a while. With the sword parried on the shield, he used another ability, Push. This caused the automaton to lose its balance. The young man knows that if his leader uses that ability now, he will be in serious trouble. But he had already said they wouldn't all make it out alive, and they don't have the strength to defeat that monster. However, it's enough to buy them some time. Being optimistic, he might end up getting lucky and still have a chance. But then they quickly feel an overwhelming presence. Argus asks what is happening in his forge. At that moment, they realize they were doomed. Argus wants to know if there are still cockroaches the automatons haven't managed to kill. Just being in his presence, they feel an intense terror. The leader was emphatic and shouted for them to flee immediately. With the little strength he had left, he charged toward Argus. All he wanted was to buy a little more time. But he was swept away with a single blow from the Titan, who incinerated him completely. There was nothing he could do. Argus was certain they were inferior to him. Both their bodies and the equipment they carried were trash. Ruled by inferior beings, this world is doomed to ruin. Intrigued, he looks at the one standing before him. The mage wields his staff, trembling. It's slightly exciting to observe that, even with fear, he's still loyal. Though in the end, it doesn't mean anything. But the boy knows he won't be able to deal with a monster that even the leader couldn't handle. Then, a man appears saying he had already told them the place wasn't safe. If they had gathered information little by little, they would have prepared better. There's no advantage in clearing a dungeon just for the sake of it. The boy doesn't even know who this person is. The association received the distress call, and he's one of the volunteers from the rescue team. He even had armor, but it was heavier than he expected. The boy thinks he came alone. Indeed, he was the only one who managed to get there. The automaton prepares to attack the intruder. A loud sound echoes through the forge's corridors. The boy is utterly terrified, and the man says that they're quite strong. At that time, Seong wasn't known by many. He was basically a nobody. He managed to cut off the monster's arm without difficulty, and first-generation explorers knew of him. His focus wasn't fame, but rather rescuing those in trouble. However, that day would mark the beginning of everything. Seong prepares to finish off the automaton. With a single strike, he split it from top to bottom with no difficulty. That display of power caught Argus' attention. Looking at him, Seong imagines this one might be a bit harder, and that day, the world learned who that man was. The aura of the strike was enough to change the dungeon's lighting. The mage can't believe that was done. The entire team was struggling to handle a colossus, and that person took it down in a single move. Seong asked the mage if he still had any mana left. He said he didn't have much, but it was enough to give him a blessing. Seong said he didn't need that, but asked if he knew any levitation enchantments. If he did, he should use it to take the other two out of there. Even though they're badly injured, they're still breathing. Argus found it arrogant that he thinks he can come back. It's almost as if he really believes he can leave there alive. Seong says he won't let Argus touch the others as long as he's there. That deeply angered the Titan. Without wasting any more time, he attacked the man with all his might. However, Seong reacted skillfully. The aura he emitted was devastating. The impact of their blades echoed through the dungeon. As they left, the mage looked back in fear, 10 years after the admission. The adventurers had reached a limit. They had superhuman strength. The technology of the equipment had also advanced, better adapting to each one's needs. But unlike the progress in status and equipment, there was still much lacking in execution and experience. The solution was human development, a martial art that defies common logic. At that time, few saw it as a solution, and they began to develop and research techniques. Argus had been struck, but his armor protected him from the first impact. Seong continued and delivered another blow. He was one of those people who perfected that martial art. The mage looked happy, thinking the monster had been defeated. But soon, his expression changed again. Argus says that guy is different because he knows how to use what he has in his hands well. If the weapon he wielded could withstand even half the strength he possesses, the result would have been different. The edge of the blade had melted from the strike. He still couldn't afford the best equipment, and it wasn't the first time this had happened with an axe. So he looked back to see those he had come to rescue. He was relieved to see they were almost out of the dungeon. Now he needed to defend himself against the hostile monster. His flaming sword was blocked by the axe's handle. Arjus commented that his defense and dodging skills were among the best he'd seen in humans. However, the axe Seong wielded was worse than anything he had ever seen. Even though he could defend, the axe couldn't handle much more. Preparing to attack once again, Arjus said that now it would be the end. But that's not what Seong wanted. The blades clashed once more with devastating force. Instead of having his attack redirected, Seong blocked it with full force. This was the origin of the technique Jeryeon would eventually learn, a skill that uses the opponent's strength against themselves. But in terms of user strength, experience, and execution ability, his father performed it on a completely different level. It was strong enough to force the Titan to step back. This was the martial art of a hero. Arjus was sure this story must be well known among humans. The hero finally defeats the monster. That day, after being struck by the boy's father, the monster inside Arjus died. When he lost, the life he had was no longer his but Seong's, who chose not to kill him. What the attack squad couldn't accomplish was completed by a single man from the rescue team. A ridiculous ending to an epic story, but the most important part of it begins after that. Ancient Titans, even when defeated, never bow to those they consider inferior. Still, Arjus accepted being exiled by humans. Sarum remembers this because it was a major event and the whole world was shocked. Eventually, he gained citizenship, and the fact that he hadn't killed anyone helped a lot. But it doesn't change the fact that he committed crimes, and to atone for them, he was given the task of forging equipment. However, this story is completely different from what she had learned. Arjus said that the staff the young man carries was made as a gift for his father. Even though his father never asked for it, Arjus thought he deserved to carry something like that. He always knew it was very solid, but didn't think it had anything special, which is why it wasn't pawned, as they thought it was useless. In fact, he's not wrong, it's only good for hitting people with brute force. That wasn't exactly what they expected to hear, and Sarum is stuck on the part where the boy mentioned pawning. Arjus said it was pretty simple, and the boy should already know this. He asked if his father used that as a weapon. He would have made an axe for him as soon as he brought the remaining material to make the blade. But one day, he lost contact with him, and since he couldn't leave the dungeon, he decided to send what he had already made to the boy's father. Even though he can't say for sure, he imagines he won't be able to complete that weapon. But that's not entirely bad, so he asked for the incomplete weapon to be handed over to him. Because now he will finish what he started, a masterpiece not for the father, but for the son. While the Titan works, they return to the upper floors. Sarum looks at him a bit curious about what she had heard. She wants to know how he's feeling now. Despite everything, he's fine, and he felt that the Titan wanted to make sure everything was okay. He doesn't know how long it will take, but he's committed to finishing as quickly as possible. He advised waiting as masterpieces take time to complete. Since Wednesday is a holiday, she wants to know if he'll have time available. She thought about helping him study for the written test, and he thought that would be productive as well. While they were still walking, there was something else she wanted to say. His father must have been an incredible person. She could never have imagined that he was the one who cleared that dungeon. She asked if he's in the hospital to get some rest after retiring. He said he'll go ahead and rest. If anything comes up, just talk to him later, but she didn't get a response to the comment she made. Already in the car, she made her way back home. Consulting the internet, she confirms that the story's narrative isn't true. That's what she had learned, but now she's thinking about Arjus' words. The team that cleared the dungeon is considered heroic today, all at the cost of another adventurer's deeds. There's no reason for Arjus to have lied about this. But thinking about Jeryeon's abilities, it's completely acceptable that his father was someone exceptional. Not to mention, it's hard to know what really happens inside a dungeon, and it often occurs that the story told is different from the facts. Seong is known as the False Dragon Slayer. He was once considered one of Korea's greatest. It was later revealed that everything was just blackmail and false statistics, which he confessed after being injured. There's even an article about the event online, debunking his achievements. This left her uncertain about what she had heard and what she was reading. The result of her practical test was now available. Inside the school, in the department responsible for dungeons, a staff member is thanked. Professor Cho apologizes to Kang, who couldn't rest over the weekend because of her. But it's only her first year, and it's important for him to observe the first-year students. She says things are pretty intense there, not only as a teacher, but the freshmen are much more talented than she was at the same stage. Now she wants to know if he expected the top student to be that particular one. Indeed, it was unexpected. Kang says that's not an easy result to predict. Sarum can't believe the exam results, as there are many geniuses alongside her. Coincidentally, all of them are hybrids. The first is Diev Choi. He inherited swordsmanship talent from his father, a white-class explorer combined with the magical talent of his elf mother. He is the perfect magic swordsman. In second place is Anasha. She has more mana and magical control than many pure elves, with the potential to become a great mage. Lastly, a boy, the son of a human and a dwarf. He possesses the strength and resilience of dwarves, combined with the flexibility and reflexes of a human, the best of both worlds. This is Ter Velkason, considered to have the best physique on the planet. He's a student at the school. Even so, he must be just as capable as the other two. The top spot should have gone to one of them, although it's hard to believe she achieved all this on her own. Perhaps the physical aspect alone gave her more points. Physicality isn't the only thing that counts. That's why she hopes he will do more, as he has the potential to become a great leader. But from what it seems, he has no interest in connecting with other students. In fact, the students are hesitant to approach him. However, there are limits to how far one can go alone, and by the second year, he will soon realize that. Kang says that's not a problem she should worry about. Sometimes things happen without us noticing and details can go unnoticed. He knows she cares about all the students, but if she believes in him more than she worries, he'll find a way to resolve things. Since then, 4 days have passed and the holiday has arrived. A group of boys is gossiping about what a girl had done, but one of them ends up bumping into a huge person. He turns around to confront this person. He wasn't expecting to come face to face with a figure chiseled like a bodybuilder, lean and ripped, practically spitting sand from his mouth. The champion of the Arnold Classic begins to speak, and he apologizes to them, saying he was distracted and didn't see them on the way. The boys are still terrified and apologize even more, intimidated by the man's imposing physique. After the interaction ends, he notices his shirt is dirty. All he can think about is how unlucky he is. The truth is, he misses his mother a lot. Stuk-Yubin went to Europe, but she was a successful hunter in Korea. She used to tell their son many stories about her time as an explorer, which fostered his admiration for Korea and its culture. Thanks to the opportunity and his natural talent, he entered the warrior school through a special transfer test. Unfortunately, though, he is an extremely introverted boy. He does want to interact with his peers, but he fears being ridiculed because he doesn't speak the language well. He hates this aspect of his personality. Seeing that he's uncomfortable, his classmates apologize for talking so loudly. But neither do they know that the giant is introverted, nor does he imagine that, in fact, they fear him. Without intending to, he has become a lone wolf. Looking to the side, he sees two boys chatting about trivial things. They are heading to a PC Bang internet cafe. He remembered his mother saying she used to visit those places to play games. Inside the establishment, there aren't many people. He doesn't even know what to do, and nearby, someone is talking on the phone. At a self-service screen, he tries to log in, but just being there makes him anxious. He imagines that he's holding up the line and should probably leave since he's alone. A young man mentioned that he probably doesn't have an account. That terminal is for people who already do, and he should head to another one. He asked him to follow as he would show him how it's done. He didn't need to fill out everything, just the essential fields. Once the registration was complete, all he had to do was pay at another machine, and then choose which computer to use. The giant thanked him and Jerryong said it was nothing. Jerryong looked at the guy and wondered if he might be a foreigner and unfamiliar with this place. However, he just wanted Serum to arrive soon since she was running late. If he'd known, he would have come later or stopped by the black market beforehand. He had received a small black object, unsure of what it was. It had been in the chest with the jelly, and he wanted to know what it could be. It was smooth to the touch, but it probably wasn't something edible. Since he didn't know what it was yet, he decided to keep it stored for now. If he needed money, it'd be better to sell the other item, which contained Enkil's blood, one of the 3 great disasters of the Agar forest. In recent decades, even though many attack teams had tried, no one had been able to subdue the beast. All they had managed to obtain were a few scales, and an insignificant amount of the creature's blood. The government had banned its hunting, and items made with its materials were worth a fortune. He was supposed to meet Serum for lunch and then head to the black market in the evening, but her delay had messed up his plans. The foreigner said there were no other seats available and sat down next to the person who had helped him. Then he told Jerryong he could sit down as he wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. Sitting down, Jerryong logged into the machine. There wasn't any special game, and the computer at his home was much better than the one here. Then Jerryong noticed something on the screen next to him. He asked if the foreigner played Heroes of Chaos, and he confirmed it. They were at similar levels. Since the people he usually played with weren't online, he invited Jerryong to team up. They could do and ranked matches. In Seoul, there are a few desolate and abandoned areas called scars. During the invasion, entire cities were lost. Some had been reclaimed over time, but others, too close to dungeons, were abandoned. These areas now serve a purpose as a second line of defense for human refuges. But in the last 20 years, nothing like that had ever happened. There had been no cases of monsters leaving the walls voluntarily. There's even a transportation service for them. One guard hates having to do this job. While his friends make money hunting, he's stuck being a monster chauffeur. Jo Yena says that if he hates it so much, he should quit and go back to the field. She was a gold-class explorer, retired after injuring her eye. She wants to know what he's doing there then. Sun Changwoo was a bronze-class adventurer. In conversation, he mentioned that the reason he's there is to make money since he can hardly join any teams anymore. Hearing this hurt his ego. While driving, something unexpected happened. They had to stop the truck. There's no way the monster escaped. Stepping out, she told her colleague to inform the station that they stopped to inspect the vehicle. Outside, she prepared to do her job. Inside the cab, he was already relaying the information. He was scared something might happen, but his colleague was very skilled, so she should be fine. Soon, he heard the door open. He was ready to tell her she had done a great job. But a different woman was there and said that wasn't much of an accomplishment. Her reflexes were decent for a government employee, but there must be a reason why she's not out in the field, and she glanced at the names of the people behind them. Looking at the driver, she asked why he was still standing there. He should be driving if he didn't want to die soon. Meanwhile, the gaming session between Jerryong and the foreigner was going great. and their food order arrived at the perfect time. Jae-rong didn't expect them to be the same age, not that he looked older, but he was much taller and stronger. So he asked which school he went to, but there wasn't time to answer. Suddenly, they felt something had happened. The ground shook and people thought it might be an earthquake. It almost seemed like something had exploded nearby. This sparked a debate, and soon they began speculating about what it could have been. The truck had crashed, perhaps the driver was drunk. One guy starts filming while the other suggests they should notify the authorities right away. From the top of the building, a girl comments that it would have been better if the truck had crashed closer to the center. Soon the place will be swarming with explorers, but she's confident she'll escape in time. However, her superiors are already ordering her to return. The monsters begin fleeing from the truck because she had woken them all up. The people who had gathered out of curiosity were already regretting it. The horned horrors, the more numerous they are, the more dangerous they become. Looking down, she estimates there are about 50 people down there, but she'll stay to watch the result. Maybe at least 100 people would die before help arrived. One curious person was grabbed by the head. He was brutally killed, while another was paralyzed by fear. The monsters are in a frenzy, with their potential victims standing before them. Then a bluish glow appears among them. Jae-rong had arrived to take down the creatures. He drove his foot into the face of the first one. Seeing what had just happened, the onlookers were stunned. The monster had been easily subdued. Jae-rong was focused and determined not to let the beasts attack innocent people. He didn't look back at the crowd, asking what they were still doing there. He ordered them to run immediately. He had dealt with this type of monster before. The ones with a single horn shouldn't be that hard to handle. As he thought this, he had to instantly focus again. A motorcycle was coming straight toward him. He barely dodged it. He quickly realized who had done it. It could only be a joke, a horned horror with two horns. As the beast came closer to him, it was met with a devastating kick. However, the result wasn't what he expected. Jae-rong had to step back. The lifespan of these monsters is between 5 and 6 years. Most of them die before they have a chance to grow a second horn, but some manage to. About 8% of the total that live longer and can reproduce. Not only is their strength increased, but it's beyond anything considered normal. Even though it's strong and fast, it's nothing he can't overcome if he needs to kill this beast. With his foot aching, he knows the biggest problem is their durability. Compared to the idiot who said he was a tank, these guys are at least 3 or 4 times tougher. If only he had one of the pieces of equipment he uses for work. The beast prepares to attack the boy once again. However, Jae-rong dodges the blow, witnessing the destruction caused by it. At a distance, he regains his position to continue the fight. The beast doesn't seem satisfied with the destruction it's already caused, so Jae-rong starts scanning his surroundings. On the ground, there's a broken stop sign. Thinking quickly, he stomps on the sign, crushing it. That way, he manages to extract the sign's pole, which is similar to a staff. The monster charges at him again, furious. Emanating his aura, Jae-rong braces for impact, now armed. He tightens his grip, focused. The beast stomps harder than expected. This gave it a huge boost of momentum and it soared over Jae-rong's head. That wasn't what he had anticipated from the creature. Now the beast is close to where several innocent people are gathered. They are completely terrified, unable to do anything to protect themselves. The beast charges at them, ready to make a snack out of them. The difference in danger between 2 and 3-star monsters is simply enormous. In terms of destructiveness, both of these monsters are already beyond human capabilities. Normal people have no choice but to be killed by these beasts. Even an experienced adventurer without proper equipment might struggle with them. However, there is one exception to this situation. The foreigner managed to catch the beast's punch with his bare hand. He's definitely determined to fight. With a single blow, he pushed the beast away. This is the exception. Those who have trained their superhuman bodies to the limit, becoming monsters themselves. The beast digs its claws into the ground to prevent being pushed further by the impact. The foreigner managed to push it back, but he knows that without a weapon, he won't be able to deal any real damage. However, something caught his attention. The beast roared menacingly at him. From behind, Jae-rong approached with his improvised staff. Using his techniques, he delivered a precise strike to the back of the creature's neck. The foreigner was surprised by the result. The beast fell, lifeless, with a puncture wound in its back. Jae-rong sighed in relief after the fight. A loud noise drew his attention. The sound piqued the foreigner's curiosity as well. Nearby, a powerful explosion had occurred. In just a single minute, the beasts had caused all that destruction. The foreigner remarked that it would take a few more minutes before help arrived. A sudden event like this is unexpected, and people are dying while they talk. Hyul-king knows how to use a taunting ability. Every tank knows it. He essentially shouts at a high frequency, attracting nearby monsters toward him. Determined to become an adventurer, he plans to draw the monsters' attention until help arrives. He told Jae-rong to find shelter, as he doesn't know how to ask him to risk himself, especially since they barely know each other. All they've done so far is play games together for a few hours. However, Jae-rong told him to give the shout already. He imagines the guy must be a tank and knows how to use the skill. But Hyul-king says it's dangerous, and Jae-rong replied that he was planning to do it alone anyway. If he were alone, he'd consider the possibilities, but he isn't. He told Hyul-king that he's good at games, especially when it comes to protecting. Besides, he also wants to be an adventurer, and if he's going to try, he'll do the best he can. There's no time to keep talking like this. It's time to act. The shop is completely destroyed. A person is hiding under the counter. Behind them, the monster had just killed an innocent bystander. The tank prepared to use his skill. In the store, the beast threw the limp body to the ground. Then it began tearing apart the counter to reach its next victim. At that moment, the tank's shout echoed. Its effect reverberated through the area, drawing the monster's attention. Immediately, the beast stopped its attack. The person it was about to kill was left confused. The girl responsible for the incident also heard the shout. She's intrigued by what might have happened. After using his skill, the tank caught his breath. Assuming an offensive stance, he was ready to fight the monsters that would appear. It didn't take long for them to gather at the epicenter of his shout. The strongest of them pointed in the boy's direction. The one-horned monsters charged toward the attack. He stood ready, prepared to fight as well. But then he heard a noise above him. A monster was approaching from his blind spot, but he managed to block the incoming blow. It wasn't enough to hurt him. With his other hand, he began concentrating his aura, and with a devastating strike, he sent the beast flying. However, it wasn't over yet, and he couldn't afford to get distracted. More monsters were advancing, ready to attack simultaneously. In the distance, the two-horned monster heard something happening. There was someone else nearby, and they were coming from above. Jaerong descended, landing near the beasts. There were two of them, each with two horns on their heads. Looking at the crashed truck, he wondered what was going on there. They were gathering the bodies of the dead in the truck. That's why there weren't so many bodies scattered on the street. Now the two horned ones were moving to attack him. Jaerong waited for them to get a little closer. They're fighting up close and without equipment. The odds are low. In the current situation, it's easier for them to get in each other's way than to help each other. So he would focus on drawing the weaker monsters since he was the tank. Jaerong was closer, and now was his turn to attack. His task was to take down the strongest one since he was the damage specialist. His improvised staff was ready to strike again. He moved so quickly past the monster that it didn't even realize it had been hit, but there were several marks on its body where the staff had struck. Compared to a needle, this was much weaker. If Jaerong had his usual staff, things would have been very different. With a staff made of ordinary materials, there's not much he can do. Even so, he's doing his best to fight. Although it's not the same, he's aware that there's a chance. That time, Zeke fought him barehanded, and despite a few fast and powerful strikes, none were overwhelming. Yet, those hits slowly wore him down. Now the monster was in mid-attack. Quickly, Jaerong managed to fend it off with rapid strikes. He knows this won't stop the beast's attack, so he dodges the ongoing blow. Even the smallest mistake here would cost him his life. He strikes again swiftly. This is a unique opportunity for him despite the danger. A chance to grow even stronger. He needs to seize this moment and come out victorious with whatever he has at his disposal. Another beast approaches, ready to attack. But in his mind, he remembered Zeke's evasive movements during their fight, and he managed to emulate similar moves. After his father, this was the first time he had encountered someone as strong. With this experience, he perfected his fourth skill, the rain of staff hitting the monster in front of him multiple times. After being brutally struck, the beast falls to the ground. However, unexpectedly, one of the creatures grabs his foot. This immediately puts him on edge. The monster threw him down, shattering the concrete. Jaerong spits out blood after the violent impact. 2 against 1 is a tricky situation. Even though it's not fair, he has no choice. This isn't a fight between humans, so things can be different. Before he could react, the tank arrived, repelling the monster. To the tank, luck is also a skill. Watching through the phone camera, 2 people were amazed by their performance. They had defeated dozens of monsters, just the 2 of them without any equipment. Dong-yoon was thrilled that he managed to record the whole action, but his friend pointed out that he only filmed it because he was too scared to run away. Ken wants to know who these 2 are since they look younger than them. Judging by what they did, they must be gold-level hunters. Either they're students at the warrior school, or they're rookies who haven't made a name for themselves yet. Either way, he plans to post the video online and asks if his friend can make a thumbnail on his laptop. The news will be out soon, and he doesn't want to miss the potential millions of views. Exhausted, the foreigner thought the rescue and containment team would have arrived sooner. However, only the 2 of them were really able to resolve the situation. Jaerong apologizes for interrupting his cool stance, but he needs help getting up off the ground. So they finally shake hands. They're both pretty worn out, and when asked if he's okay, Jaerong replies that he's more inclined to say no. Maybe he has a fracture or 2, but considering what he was expecting, it wasn't so bad. The foreigner was amazed that Jaerong managed to handle the 2 two-horned monsters. Jaerong returned the compliment, saying his friend had dealt with 9 monsters in total and still helped him with the last ones. But the foreigner points out that his were just 2-star monsters. Since they were chatting, he asked which school Jaerong goes to. Maybe reality was different from what he had heard, as he heard that schools around here weren't that great. He apologized, saying he didn't mean to speak poorly of Jaerong's school, even though he assumed Jaerong was also from the warrior school. Without answering, Jaerong asked how well-ranked his friend was and how many people there were stronger than him at his school. But the foreigner didn't know, as he talked to very few people and despite taking some tests, wasn't sure if they could properly assess his abilities. He guessed he was probably somewhere in the middle. Now he's wondering how he's going to help his elf friend. Either way, there's still one last thing to handle. He wants to know if that monster plans to stay on top of the wagon doing nothing. It was the only one not drawn by the taunting skill, and there might be something different about it. But he doesn't think that it's the special one among them. There's a lot of blood around the area, and surely there must be something else inside, and that something is what's special. For now, he thinks they should just keep watch since they could easily deal with this last monster. A loud noise starts coming from the wagon and it begins shaking violently. A hand suddenly emerges from the hole in the roof. This surprised both boys. The monster is being pulled inside violently. The unit's claws couldn't hold on. Something inside is definitely devouring it now. The horned horrors live in a society similar to that of a tribal system. Those with 2 horns act as parents and chiefs, leading hordes of no more than 10. These small tribes unite, increasing their numbers and strength. Since they are relatively weak and dungeons are dangerous, these monsters rank low on the food chain and their numbers are kept in check by predators. However, in rare cases, a mutant can develop a 3rd horn, and this mutant is no mere leader of a small tribe, but a king who commands hundreds, even thousands. A horned horror king is a beast with a danger level of approximately 5 stars. It didn't take long for him to notice the 2 boys. Immediately, they became alert to what was happening. With a simple movement, the king unleashed a massive and destructive attack. Both of them had to quickly get out of the way. Moving at incredible speed, the beast was already near Jaerong, ready to strike. Jaerong had to react quickly to avoid being fatally hit. The monster's hand was powerful enough to destroy his improvised staff. The beast's attack broke through his defense, landing a blow on his stomach. Not stopping there, the king was already preparing to deliver a kick. But his attack was interrupted. King had caught him in a body lock. The beast's feet dug into the ground, tearing up the pavement. Even as King pushed him back, he realized the situation was worsening. The horned horror king grabbed him with both hands. With no effort, the king lifted him off the ground. Then he slammed King into the earth, creating a massive crater. If there was one thing they didn't have now, it was time. 2 geniuses who would eventually grow to reach the full extent of their potential. But in the current situation, maybe they wouldn't, even if they could use everything they knew. There was a vast gap that couldn't be bridged. Jaerong rose, staggering, yelling at the monster not to do it. With his attention focused on the boy, the king prepared another attack. The red glow of its aura was nearly upon him. Jaerong took the hit head-on, unable to defend. With that, the beast seemed to have fulfilled its desire to strike. However, it felt something else was still happening. A far more dangerous presence than the king was now on the battlefield. Night had already fallen and Seong still lay bedridden in the hospital. Before he disappeared, not many people knew him. Now the monster was utterly terrified. There is no one in this world who can precisely explain what Seong left behind. 11 years ago, much happened. A man made an unexpected confession to the press. He admitted all of his wrongdoings and begged the public for forgiveness. That event shocked the entire world. 12 hours before the boys engaged in their battle with the monsters, Saram had been deep in confusion. The truth she learned on Sunday was the only thing on her mind. She spent the next few days researching Jaerong's father and whether he had been unjustly accused. She was certain many people coveted the position of someone who was once number 1 but had now lost his powers. What she couldn't understand was how the situation was handled. It started with multiple accusations, the testimony of victims, and the building of the case. Public opinion became divided, but because he was popular, the forged information didn't completely tarnish his image. If it had been her, she would have fought back to the end, but what Seong did. Rather than fighting back, he accepted all the accusations made against him. After the press conference, even his supporters turned their backs on him and Seong became a liar overnight. She doesn't understand why he did that and if there was something coercing him. Accepting the charges was like throwing fuel on the fire. She wasn't sure if she was the only one who noticed, but there was something in his facial expressions. Instead of looking wronged, it was as if he was accepting the consequences. Then she came across something even more shocking. In his records, there was no mention of him having a family. She wondered if Jaerong wasn't really his son, but it made more sense that he just wasn't officially registered as they did resemble each other somewhat. Maybe Seong had accepted all those accusations, because Jaerong was somehow involved, and at this moment, Jaerong didn't even realize what was really happening to his body. He looked at his hand and felt something different. The beast charged at him, furious. Its advance was relentless. It knew it needed to finish the boy. And in the face of this, there was one thing Jaerong knew for sure now. His body could move. His reaction was perfect, landing a strike on the monster's face. Nothing more, nothing less. All he needed to know now was that he could still move, and he was determined to destroy the monster in front of him. Using his skills, he began to strike it repeatedly. The pressure was immense, and the monster did everything it could to defend itself. It tried to move and escape from Jaerong's relentless attacks. Jaerong knew the creature wouldn't get far, and then the beast's counterattack came at him. Although the monster's aura was powerful, it wasn't fast enough to stop Jaerong from dodging. However, the beast had anticipated this, and now it was airborne directly above him. With the beast close, it unleashed yet another attack. It didn't take long for it to be surprised by the outcome. The attack had failed to harm the boy, Jaerong immediately retaliated with a violent kick. The force of the impact was so great that the beast was sent crashing into the nearest building. Jaerong knew the fight wasn't over yet, but with those last 2 strikes, he had managed to expose a weakness in the creature. A precise strike to the chin with his needle. In his current state, it was possible to land that blow. But just as the mysterious aura had appeared, it vanished once more. This was the worst possible moment for it to disappear. The monster crawled out of the crater it had made. Jaerong felt anxious. The energy that had been coursing through his body was now gone. There was nothing left for him to defend against the incoming attack. As the beast continued its charge, it noticed something. The truck's container was falling directly on its head. The beast was struck, but there's a reason why explorers have distinct roles. Each one is suited to a specific function. The impact from the container wasn't enough to stop the beast. It charged toward Cheolkang, utterly enraged. Unable to dodge, Cheolkang defended himself the best he could. The blow was incredibly powerful. But as a tank, even with his body battered, he endured. That's the primary role of a tank. However, he had been far beyond his limits for a while. Still, his resilience bought them just a bit more time. Jaerong was now ready to deliver his best attack. The monster knew it couldn't avoid what was coming. Jaerong's fist, charged with aura, closed in swiftly. A perfectly executed uppercut connected with the creature's chin. That was the role of someone whose job was to deal damage. Debris scattered across the area. On the ground lay the beast's lifeless body, its jaw shattered. A monster transport vehicle had been stolen. As a result, there were dozens of civilian casualties. After all of this had transpired, the rescue team finally arrived. It didn't take long for the news to spread worldwide. The heroic feat of those two, now labeled as heroes, quickly gained recognition. Manhwa watches the video, unsure of what's happening. The house has a large garden surrounding it. A young Jaerong had scraped himself and his wound was being treated. His father told him that even small wounds must be treated. Otherwise, they could worsen later. Jaerong asked if his father ever felt pain since he bled a lot when fighting monsters. His father replied that not only did he feel pain, but he also felt fear. But he tried his best to hide his pain because his job was to keep others from getting hurt. As a child, Jaerong's greatest wish was to be like his father. But there was always something in his mind. He knew his father didn't want the same for him. His father had told him to find another career and always seemed sorrowful when they discussed the topic. Perhaps that's why. Why he didn't want Jaerong to follow the path of an explorer. But they never spoke about it openly. Jaerong thought that once he grew up, his father would explain the reason. But now he couldn't do that anymore. Jaerong's eyes opened and he stared at the unusual ceiling. There was something about the feeling that made him feel nostalgic. A figure beside him asked if those words were directed at him. Startled, Jaerong looked to the side. Zeke stood there saying that Jaerong was only here now because it was determined. Jaerong wanted to know why the director was there keeping him company. As soon as he sat up, pain shot through his entire body, and Zeke told him not to move too much. Despite the treatment being successful, he should be in a coma due to the extent of his injuries, and it would take him a month to fully recover. Until then, Zeke advised him to focus on healing because there was much to prepare for. The boy thanked him, saying it was the right thing to do, but he had something to say. Zeke cut him off, stating that if it was about his father, yes, they knew each other and had worked together. Jaerong moved his hand quickly, so fast that it made Zeke focus on him. But Jaerong only took the apple Zeke was holding. Seeing Zeke's expression, he asked if Zeke thought he was going to hit him or something. Zeke replied that it wasn't the reaction he was expecting. The boy says he doesn't know what Zeke's expectations are, but he just wanted to know if he knew his father or not. Judging by the difference in how Zeke is treating him now, he suspects they were more than just colleagues. Holding the apple, he takes a deep breath. He recalls telling Zeke to either get out and die or cut his arm with a knife in his hand to prove a point. He figured Zeke might have thought that way and asked how his performance was. He said he tried hard to make it seem real and apologized if Zeke took it personally. Zeke brushed it off, saying he expected a more emotional reaction when the news came. Maybe he would have had that reaction 3 years ago. At that time, it was the only thing on his mind. He wanted to take revenge on everyone who had turned their backs on his father and caused him to end up the way he is now. Hearing this, Zeke asks what made him change his mind. But Jaerong thinks he just matured and that what he thought before was just madness. He's not even strong enough to defeat Zeke, let alone seek revenge. What's most important to him now is earning enough money to pay for the hospital. That's his priority. He doesn't know when they'll find a cure, but he'll do everything in his power to make it happen. He's determined to overcome any obstacle in his way. Zeke says he's only there to ask him a few questions. He wants to know why Jaerong isn't formally registered as Sung's son, and who took care of him after his father became bedridden. Jaerong explains that he was raised solely by his father and would be in danger if people knew whose son he was. Besides, he grew up alone, to which Zeke nods, realizing that's the truth. Zeke then asks if he's ever heard the name Duganaweg, but Jaerong doesn't recognize it. It's not a person. It's the name of a dragon, the destroyer of worlds. Duganaweg is the source of the poison that plagues his father. He's also the most dangerous dragon and still lives in the world today. The word dragon strikes terror into the hearts of people. A few years after the invasion, the walls were completed with the help of other races. With the rise in the explorers' abilities, humanity no longer faced the threat of extinction. However, there were still a few rare, dangerous events, like it being powerful enough to destroy the walls. That's what a dragon is capable of: stronger, smarter, and more cunning than any other species. And they frequently demonstrated hostility toward humans. Among all monsters, dragons are easily the most dangerous. They don't hate humans, but they see them as a resource to dominate and exploit. Their mistake was underestimating humans, thinking they wouldn't overcome the dungeons, so they didn't attack them. Once order had collapsed in the world, they planned to pose as gods in exchange for protection from threats. Jaerong remarks that perhaps they should thank the dragons for staying out of things. But as progress didn't go as planned, they began attacking humans. It was during this time that Jaerong's father appeared. With strategy and determination, he became the explorer who proved that even dragons, powerful as they are, could be defeated. The news of his dragon slaying spread, and things began to change. Jaerong recalls hearing this story too, and that's when the dragons began to hide. But Zeke corrects him. In reality, they didn't hide, they changed their strategy. Dragons are cunning, even capable of changing their appearance. Since they couldn't destroy humanity by force, they began infiltrating human society. This information is classified, and Zeke only shared it because Jaerong is Sung's son. Duganawig was the last dragon Sung pursued before falling ill. If he's defeated, an antidote for Sung could be made. If Jaerong intends to take on that challenge in the future, he needs to grow stronger, as Zeke plans to help him kill the dragon. Jaerong is already strong enough to stand up from his bed. Leaning against the window, he examines the card he received. He recalled what he had heard, that if it didn't seem possible, he should just ignore the idea. But if it was true, he wouldn't miss the chance to help his father. However, Zeke firmly tells him that it's not up to him to decide. To seize this opportunity, he needs to rise to the top. Dragons are cunning and have already infiltrated society, hiding behind facades, waiting for the right moment to act. Even if there's evidence to expose them to the world without capturing one, there's no point in doing so. If they act too soon, the dragons will simply go back into hiding, and it will cause widespread panic. To prevent this, they need to be precise and swift. Only by doing so can they stop the dragons from escaping and hiding again. In recent years, a team has been assembled specifically to deal with Duganawig. All of its members are experienced and skilled adventurers capable of subduing a dragon. If Jaerong doesn't become strong enough, no matter how much he wants to be part of it, he won't be accepted by the others. It's not ideal to have someone on the team who might slow them down. This wouldn't just jeopardize the operation, but also put everyone's safety at risk. If all this is true, Jaerong wants to know how much time he has to prepare, as he knows they won't wait for him. Zeke explains that they still don't know the dragon's exact location, but they plan to find him in 2 years or less. And as Jaerong already pointed out, when the time comes, they won't wait for him. Before leaving, Zeke says he doesn't care what Jaerong thinks of him. If Jaerong never wants to see him again, that's fine, but Zeke makes one promise. Whether Jaerong is with them or not, they will hunt down that dragon at all costs. Those words left a mark on Jaerong's mind. It was a glimmer of hope, the real chance to cure his father. This sudden information was everything he had wanted to hear, that it was possible. It gave him hope. But it also brought something else. Fear. Fear that he might not be able to prepare in time for the mission that would avenge his father. What he has right now isn't enough, but he will make it, no matter what it takes. For all this time, he had no hope for a cure, and now he has good news. This small spark of hope gave Jaerong a motivation he had never felt before in his life. As he washed his face, he heard the door open. The nurse who entered was happy to see he was awake. She asked if he was in any pain, and he replied that he felt only muscle soreness. The doctor would explain the details, but she told him he'd feel like that for a few more days. They had to reconstruct his arm almost entirely. When he was rescued, his arm was in critical condition. Every precaution was necessary, or the risk of amputation would have been real. It was thanks to a high-level healer that the surgery was a success. Looking at his arm, Jaerong wanted to ask her something. He wanted to know what happened to his friend who fought alongside him. The nurse reassured him that his friend was doing very well, with an incredible recovery, and had been discharged the same day he arrived at the hospital. Hearing this, Jaerong was curious to know how long he had been hospitalized. But before he could ask, the nurse asked if she could take a photo with him. She took a selfie with him right then and there. Jaerong then asked if he could be discharged as well. The nurse said he could, but warned him that if he left through the front door, he'd have problems. The hospital was full of reporters. They all wanted a chance to interview him as soon as he left. Jaerong couldn't imagine why they were there, so the nurse told him he needed to find out quickly. Showing him the screen of her phone, Jaerong was surprised. The whole situation could have turned into a horrible disaster. If it weren't for him and his friend, there would have been hundreds of casualties, if not more. Everyone wanted to know who he was, and reporters had been coming to the hospital non-stop. Handing him a bag, she said that his friend had asked for it to be delivered to him. If he didn't want to reveal his identity, he should use what was inside and sneak out the back of the hospital. Sarum had prepared it, and there was likely a spell on it for concealing his identity. But when Jaerong opened the bag, he saw a rope inside. That wasn't exactly the kind of exit he had hoped for. Since he had no other options, he tossed the rope out the window, and he made his way down to the ground floor. From above, the nurse called out to him, telling him not to worry about the photo. She'd only make it public once he became a famous explorer. Jaerong waved back, still unsure of the magnitude of the situation. Serim was waiting for him in her car. She was expecting him to come to her so they could leave. Jae-rong asked if the rope was really the only possible option. Without answering, she asked him if he'd prefer to be discovered. He admitted that he didn't, but he was also curious about the bag in the car. Serim explained that she had bought clothes for him, along with a new phone, assuming his old one had broken. This touched him deeply, but she told him not to react that way. In any case, she didn't even know where to begin talking about what had happened. An incident like that happening so close to him, and more than that, the fact that he had been able to defeat that monster. But she knew his life was full of events like this, so she asked where they were going now. The truth was, she wanted to rest, but they only had that day and nothing more. If you want custom-made clothes, you have to go today, but he says he already has clothes with him. Serim says she's not talking about regular clothes, but the ones he'll wear as an explorer. And in fact, she expects him to understand how lucky he is. The best tailor on the planet agreed to make armor for him. Armor material is divided into 3 categories, the first one being clothes, normal material. It has the worst defense capability among all of them, but since it can be easily targeted by support magic, it is usually worn by mages and healers who stay away from the front line. The second category is steel, which is indeed very tough. However, it ends up being extremely heavy. Dungeon ore is denser, and without strength and stamina, it's impossible to wear such armor. Among them, leather is the middle ground, not as heavy, but still solid enough. Ideal for those focused on dealing damage in close combat like him. Maybe he should consider wearing armor from now on. Serim is also curious and wants to know how he defeated the monster. She wants the details, but Jae-rong says someone filmed it, so she can just watch to understand. However, the video doesn't capture everything, it only shows him defeating the Own and 2 horned ones. It doesn't show how he defeated the 5-star one, which surprised him because he didn't know it was such a strong monster. Indeed, it was very strong, so he suspected something like that. Even though he and Shilkang were perfectly prepared, it still should have been impossible. But then that mysterious power emerged and he doesn't know what it was. She insists again about why he doesn't talk about what happened. But the truth is, he doesn't even know how to explain it. It just happened in the best, I don't know, just did style. It doesn't make any sense. Even professionals need to join a team to fight a monster like that. Even if he's not lying, and he's not, it's hard to believe. This made her puzzled, as geniuses really are different. However, she told him to be cautious. Things from now on would be exhausting. It's not just the reporters, but now the 2 of them are at the epicenter of all of this. Shilkang was unlucky and had to give several interviews for 4 days straight. He even ended up appearing on television. But all this time, he avoided talking about Jae-rong as much as possible. Even simple questions like his name, he refused to answer without his friend's permission. This reminded him of the favor he had asked him. If anyone asked for details about what happened, he was to say that he didn't know either. Because if he could keep his identity hidden, he would prefer it that way. Shilkang agreed and said he would do as requested. The girl wants to know how they ended up getting close, but he doesn't know either. She advised him to stay off the radar until he could take the admission test. He wants to know if there's a reason for that. On his phone, his manager says he wants to talk to him soon. Serim has been reading about the tests, and the more she learns, the more she realizes how difficult it is. In recent years, the passing rate has been 1 in 100, and Jae-rong thinks there are many people who just take it for the sake of it. And they must be, at least, worse than Serim. Seeing that she was annoyed, he said he didn't mean to imply she's bad, but she told him to shut up. But the truth is, based on skill, he's not wrong because she's a person with enormous potential. However, he should see things from another perspective. People who lack ability don't do things alone. In fact, they do things together, and that's when he realized what it was all about. In the test, they form teams. Candidates are usually children of adventurers, so this contact makes it easier to form teams for their children. Almost all the candidates come from such backgrounds, and it's those who get approved. If his identity is exposed, he will quickly become their target. Even if the school discourages this, that's not what happens. He might even try for special admission, but that's not what he wants. Even though this is true, there are those who get approved on their own, and that's what he needs to know. He's going to beat them all and pave his way alone. She likes his motivation, but it seems a bit naive. Meanwhile, she already wants to change clothes. Pointing to where the bathroom is, she told him to change and meet her at the end of the hallway. At the reception desk, the secretary is working. Serim says she has an appointment with the CDO of the place. She just told her to wait a few minutes. On the phone, she passes along the information about the visitor, and he said he would tell her about what happened. Unfortunately, he had an unmissable commitment and is not available. That's unfortunate because he knows there isn't another day available for this. He said he would make up for her time, but Serim says it's not about money. She needs it because of the warrior school admission exam, and that cancellation could mess everything up. Someone nearby said she looked familiar and wanted to know her name. There is a saying among adventurers that the current generation is different from theirs. The first generation paid with blood for progress. Since then, everything has advanced in terms of technology. What has also changed are the circumstances of each of their births. The first generation retired and provided everything for their children. It wasn't just talent that was passed down, but also a quality education from the earliest moments of childhood. This makes them wonder who the greatest beneficiaries of this are, and many would say it's that girl. That is Ham Dae-yoon. and she knows that girl is a first-year student at the warrior school. She wants to know if he knows her since she is the student council president. Anyway, she'd like to skip the introduction between the two. The CEO there is her uncle, and she's the reason he had an unmissable commitment. Given that, she understands that she's upset about having her appointment canceled. And it would be better to say that instead of having her appointment canceled, he preferred to give his spot to her. In fact, she'd be grateful for helping out. That's a better story to tell. Serum is aware of the influence that Clown possesses, because she's already heard stories about what she's capable of. As the two talk, Jeryeon just arrives. Since she is Serum's senior, it seems they have no other option. Even without knowing her, he thanked the guy, but he wasn't finished speaking. He told her to cut that small talk and get lost already. She definitely wasn't expecting that. That unexpected interaction made the secretary nervous. The girl said the kid's got guts, and she wants to know who he is. Serum tries to prevent them from continuing the conversation. Her hand trembles slightly. It was as if she had struck Serum. Immediately, she felt what might have happened. It wasn't her she was talking to, so she wasn't supposed to speak, but Serum felt as if she had been cut anyway. The clown didn't ask that idiot anything, so she should know her place and stay quiet. Jeryeon introduces himself, saying he's 17 and lives in Gwangju. He's 1.80 meters tall, doesn't know how much he weighs now, and his favorite food is sausage with sauteed vegetables. That should be all, but the most important thing is that he's preparing to enter the warrior school. And right now, he's considerably disappointed, because even in that school, there are conceited people like her, who think they're much more than they are. She smiled like a psychopath, her hand even trembling with rage. Now he felt the same as Serum. She says she doesn't exactly hate people like him. That is, if he can back up what he said, since he wanted to transfer to that school. He hasn't even taken the exam yet, and already behaves like someone who studies there. But he smiled a bit, and asked if that's how she does things. But he's curious to know what she thought, as it was the first time he tried it. He's curious to know from her if it's up to the standard she expected. Now the girl is irritated by the interaction. From a distance, her uncle calls her by name. This is Sangwoo, and he wants to know what the hell they're doing there. He wanted to know why she visited without informing him, as she even took the phone out of his hands. It's only been a week since her last incident, just a week. He wants to know if she wants her father to get angry again. The adult apologizes to the two of them, as his niece tends to act on her own. Serum says he doesn't need to apologize, but she's deeply grateful. Since it's all just that clown's nonsense, things aren't that bad. But the rumors are true, she's arrogant and only values those who are strong. Jeryeon asked her to come closer to him. He wanted to know what exactly that annoying girl does because she doesn't seem like an ordinary senior. She's the president of the student council, in other words. She's simply the strongest student in the entire school right now. Students in these schools receive temporary licenses. At gem rank, they can go into dungeons under professional supervision. With this license, students can take advantage of their breaks to explore dungeons. This way, they can gather experience for when they become full-fledged explorers. But there are a few exceptions to this. Those who belong to the student council are seen as professionals even though they're not officially registered. In addition to having political influence with the school's administration, they can also join attack teams against 5-star or higher monsters. They are what's expected, the next generation of ranked warriors. Since she's in her 3rd year, she's 2 years older than them. That would be the case, but she's still in her 2nd year, and Jeryeon wants to know if she failed. That's not it. Actually, she took the position from the previous president, but he wants to know how that could happen. Serum had already told him the school is basically driven by strength and skill. Students can join the council starting in the 1st semester of their 2nd year, and that's what she did. She quickly unsheathed her sword. That's how the school's biggest event happened, and she challenged all the council members. Before the 1st semester ended, she had defeated all of them, becoming the youngest council president in history. Despite everything, she said she was about to leave there. Serum is relieved that nothing bad happened, but Jeryeon would like to make a bet with her. Since she seems busy, it will be quick. He heard she's famous, and she must have her reasons for being a jerk for no reason. The bet is simple. If he loses, the time slot is hers. Serum tries to apologize for him, thinking the boy is completely out of his mind. If it's a bet, she has to face a consequence if she doesn't win. He really liked that she's smart and asked if she knows what shadow boxing is. It's a basic form of close combat training. The one who touches their opponent first, or puts them in a disadvantageous position, wins. If he loses, he'll give her the time slot, and it's perfect because there's no risk of a traumatic injury from a hit. Now if she loses the bet, as soon as he enters the school, she should give up her position as president to him. That's one of the craziest things. There's no way she'll accept that proposal. But it's interesting enough, so she ends up accepting the challenge. After hearing this, she even learned the boy's name. Since they couldn't do it in the hallway, they went to a workshop where the durability of the pieces is tested. Both are ready to start. The brat is quite confident she'll win. The same can be said for Jeryeon. Serum, on the other hand, is very anxious. That's unnecessary, their problem was already resolved. Not to mention, he's badly injured, and even if he wins, she won't give up the position to him. But he says he's not going to win. Now Serum doesn't know what to say. Even healthy, he wouldn't stand a chance. She's way too strong. If that's the case, why did he make the bet with her then? But Jeryeon tells her not to worry. It's normal for her to be confused, but she should trust him more. In the end, it won't be a bad exchange, only Serum doesn't understand the purpose of it. She thinks he intends to lose to see the good side of her, but it's impossible for him to be that stupid. Her uncle says he has nothing to say except to apologize. He knows she should be a leader, but instead of being receptive, she ends up being harsh with the truth. And he apologized once more to Serum, who said it wasn't necessary. All this is only happening because the boy is also hard-headed, but he doesn't agree with what she said. Even though he doesn't know the boy, he can feel that he's very confident. Then the brat says he must have already noticed. She won't use both arms, so it will be a bit fairer for him. But that's not important because it will serve as an excuse when she loses. That audacity makes her more interested. So she started preparing her stance. In the blink of an eye, she had already disappeared. He is surprised, preparing to react. He managed to dodge the first attack. This made both Serum and the brat's uncle surprised, but for different reasons. Serum was surprised by the speed of the attack, which was almost imperceptible. In this type of training, someone has to accept the risk of exposing themselves. But Gaeun didn't show any hesitation, more fear. She simply executed her attack, with speed to protect her immense pride. Serum knows that if it were her, she would never have been able to react. Then the tailor breaks the silence. Han doesn't know if he's the first to ask this question. He wants to know if this student is really preparing to transfer to the warrior school. Looking at the data that was sent to him, there's no doubt that the boy is talented. But what he sees with his own eyes is beyond expectations. He too was an adventurer, full of energy. And he's aware that Jiryong's intention isn't to prove himself, but to learn more about who this person is. Gaeun is already very strong for her age, and with a little more experience, she'd easily be on par with the lower-ranked ones. The boy just wants to get a sense of where he needs to reach. Not only that, but also the distance he needs to cover. And so far, he's been able to dodge with mastery. After several blows, he gained a bit of distance. Gaeun says it's been a while. Since she entered the school, no one has been able to dodge her attacks for so long. She's impressed by him. She definitely didn't expect him to last this long. His arm isn't the only thing injured. Judging by how he is now, he must be far from his full physical capacity. But Jiryong says she hasn't seen him at full capacity yet, and she shouldn't assume that. Speaking more softly, she said she saw he was pretty fast when he faced the Horned Horror. She watched the video hundreds of times, and she's a fan of him, the anonymous hero that no one knows yet. Returning to her normal tone, she suggested they call it a tie, and they could settle this another time. As soon as he enters the school and is healed, they'll continue. Because she doesn't want things to end here. She can go on with her uncle, but Jiryong said he doesn't believe those words. That confidence, she still doesn't know what's going on. A tie isn't something he's willing to accept here, because the student council president position is at stake. Since he doesn't intend to give up, it's better they don't waste more time. He's ready to continue, but the three of them thought the same thing. He's bluffing. He's wasting the best chance he's had so far since the bet started. That's a problem because she likes ambitious people, and what he just showed wasn't ambition, just foolishness. Jiryong looks at her with a slight smile, and took a few steps toward her. After those words, he was the first to move. Now it's his turn to attack in this fight. Surprisingly, she had to be fully immersed in the moment. Even her uncle didn't expect that. Jiryong barely missed hitting her with everything he had. Serum thought he had been holding back this whole time, but that wasn't the case, and the tailor realized he had been completely wrong in his assessment. It wasn't just a test of strength that he sought with Gaeun. In that short span of time, he managed to learn and replicate her movements. He's a monster, and it's not about winning or losing here. His intention is to learn Gaeun's technique. Finishing his attack, he said that's how she did it. Since he was a smuggler from a young age, it was a rule he followed strictly. She shouldn't keep watching because there's more he wants to see from her, and the rule is this: never make a deal to lose. Technique isn't just about using strength to knock someone out, but rather the refinement of movement to extract the best from an individual. From the way you breathe, to the way you take any step. What makes each of these details important is the timing of execution. People dedicate their time and lives to perfect this, gaining knowledge through repetition, trial, and error. The knowledge is then passed down so the next generation can refine it. Even with talent, you can't surpass the limit of knowledge on your own. Because he's naturally talented, Jiryong became strong by himself. But as soon as his development slowed after puberty, he came face to face with a brutal truth. There was a wall in front of him preventing him from getting stronger. Only by breaking through that wall would he be able to become stronger. So he got rid of the sling that was limiting him. He asked why she was hesitating so much because he had been very clear. He's sure he's going to enter the school, and she said she'd be happy to teach a rookie like him. It seems that in reality, she wants to avoid losing, and he understands that. This left her speechless for a moment, and she asked her uncle if he remembered what she asked for last time. An attack squad wanted to make a deal with her, and he advised her to visit them to build her reputation. She will listen to him, but asks that in return, he doesn't hold her back. This made him uneasy, asking what she intends to do, and Gaeun tells her opponent that he wanted to see her dodge. If that's the case, she'll show him. It's time for him to make her dodge his attack. But she was already about to land a kick on the boy. He observes the attack closely, waiting for an opening. Avoiding contact, he found what he was looking for. Every movement has a beginning and an end, as well as a transition phase between them. When you observe someone, you can predict what they will do next. Gaeum is using this to her advantage. By skipping a few steps, it's possible to deceive her observer. It's not just difficult to predict what comes next, but each movement seems faster than it actually is. This is the result of decades of development, something Gaeum's father created, and became known for executing with mastery. This is called Flash, an incredibly fast technique. Jeryeong performed it twice in a row in a way that Gaeum hasn't yet shown mastery over. This isn't a technique that can be replicated just by understanding the concept. Flexibility, reflexes, and above all, time are essential for perfect execution. Any mistake and the technique won't happen. Even at his physical peak, her father didn't master the technique until shortly after his 20s. It took him 3 months just to start understanding the beginning of it. He had to perfect it just to train with his niece, and the boy is already doing all of that with ease. As Han realized, Jeryeong is in terrible health. He's almost out of energy after everything he's done. But even with all that happening in his body, he moves as if he were at the peak of his vigor. He feels a sense of accomplishment as if he knows he can become even stronger than he already is. It's not an orthodox form of learning, but he also has a good reason to get stronger. And he learned exactly how to do that. He didn't learn because he needed to, but because he discovered that learning is fun. Now he doesn't feel the pain in his body or the fatigue in his lungs. All he wants now is to keep pressuring Gaeum. She realized she's in a delicate situation. Jeryeong presses her with mastery using his new technique. Contact is imminent, and there's nothing she can do. This made Han need to intervene. A great silence falls over the place. Han stood still in the middle of the way. Gaeum had told him not to try and separate them. However, she's happy it ended before he had to get involved. Despite everything, it's unfortunate. Gaeum admits she lost the bet, but Jeryeong says the same thing she does. Now both are at an impasse. She said she wasn't going to use her hands, but Jeryeong didn't agree to that part. Whether using hands or not, he was still hit. She might be saying that out of pride, but to be honest, she's not that strong. Then her uncle said there's no need to decide who won or not. It's his fault that things reached this point, and given Jeryeong's health, it's not good to continue. So they should decide it's a tie, and that it was an opportunity for both of them to learn. As soon as the boy fully recovers, they can have a formal challenge between the two, if that's what he suggests. Gaeum looks at him threateningly and tells him to listen. They'll meet again at the school, and if he fails to enter or loses to someone before losing to her, she won't forgive him in this lifetime. Despite everything for him, the fight was definitely an excellent learning experience. As she was leaving, Yeun asked for Sarum's name, and she told her if she's the one sponsoring the boy, she'd like to apologize. She doesn't know how good Sarum is as an adventurer, but from what it seems, she's not a complete useless person. She has a good eye for people, and Jeryeong wasn't the only one who had fun today. Now the two were sitting on the couch waiting. All this waiting was killing him. Sarum is happy that after everything, he doesn't have to go to the hospital, but he wishes he could. And after everything, she's surprised she didn't expect Gaeun to admit she lost. Since she saw everything, she believes Jeryeong won, but he doesn't see it that way. He was the first to break the rules. When he removed the sling to attack, neither of them was fighting with the intention to win. With that in mind, he was the first to cross the line. In the end, he was going all out, and if he had hit her, he could have caused severe injuries. If he had been in her position, he would have used his hands too, because there was no other choice. Sarum wants to know what would have happened if they had fought at full strength. For someone who didn't want him to fight, she seems to have gotten too immersed in what she saw. He then gets up from the couch. He realized they had arrived. In the room, two people finally enter. Sarum turns to see who they are. It's Han, who says he's grateful they waited all this time. He ended up bringing some pizzas for them to eat. After eating, he apologized to them. His niece caused some trouble, and he should have taken them out to eat. But Jeryeong is already thankful for the pizzas. For him, food just needs to be plentiful, and that's enough. Adventurers like him eat 5 times as much food. Sarum hadn't thought about that before, but he had been out cold for 4 days without eating anything. Anyway, his workshop doesn't work with leather, but with a similar material. They use fibers from high-class monsters as raw material. They make a strong combination with the aim of creating the best outfit for the user. This material is lighter and more resistant than leather. Thinking about Jeryeong, Han already knows which material combination and clothing type would suit him best. He has seen what Jeryeong is capable of, and he already has his personal information. There's just one more thing he keeps questioning. The final stage of production involves immersing the material in oil to increase its resistance and durability. Sarum already knew this, which is why she requested the best material be used. But under the current circumstances, obtaining this oil is almost impossible. They used the oil from the voracious whale of the deep seas. They had a monopoly on this material, but due to unexpected circumstances, hunting them is now non-existent. There are other materials that can be used as substitutes with almost no practical difference. But that would imply a breach of contract and error that shouldn't happen. And if they want to change their minds, it's okay. He can even recommend them to a master specialist in leather. He's willing to cover the loss of time for them. Jeryeong says he doesn't mind. If the difference in quality isn't that significant, there's no problem. He doesn't even use good equipment anyway. And above all, he wants to use the equipment made by this guy. Besides, he asked if Han was the one who taught his niece. He doesn't understand much about equipment, but he would feel better knowing it was made by someone strong. If that's the case, it'll stick with him. Sarum knew something was off that day. It's already been 10 years since Han retired, but he was grateful to hear that. And he was happy to receive the compliment. Sarum has no idea where all the food went. If they trust him, he will do his best to create that equipment. The more he thinks about it, the more disappointed he is with what happened last week. There was a hunt, and he thought he would get good materials from it. He asked if they had heard about the Imperial Wasp, and Sarum mentioned the Royal Jelly. But in that monster, there is another material considered excellent by equipment makers. The black wax, which is used to protect the queen. Only a few of them can produce this wax for protection. Showing his phone to Jeryeong, Han asked if that was what he was talking about. There was a picture, but since he lost his old phone, he had to improvise and draw it. Now Han is surprised that the boy saw it firsthand. The truth is that Jeryeong smuggled it, but he said he saw it when he went to Sarum's house. Rich people really have lots of things. Now, Jeryeong is in the hospital. He should have seen someone before heading there. It will take an hour, and the manager should be available by then as well. Han asked if Jeryeong had eaten, and indeed he had, but he would be up for eating again. As long as Han helps pay, of course. The door opens slowly where Jeryeong is. He needed to hang up now, but asked them to call him as soon as they arrived, because the plans he had for that day just showed up. Zeke says it's been a while, and Ho suggests they talk outside. 11 days ago, they discussed some things at the hospital. It's not good to make too much noise in Jeryeong's room. An attack team led by one man disbanded, and they might just stay quiet if that's the case. Ho says Zeke is still the same, easily irritating people. These two used to be allies, but not everything is friendly between them. Zeke got too worked up seeing him. Jawan or Ho is a retired adventurer. He was number 5 before that, and since they're on the same side, Zeke should shut up and follow him. Sarum wonders if her friend will keep surprising her like this, and she wants to know more about the black wax he has. She imagines it's the item that was in the chest, and she should have been informed about it. But Jeryeong didn't even know what it was, yet he thanked her for handling it discreetly. After Argis, nothing has been easy, and now she wants to know if he's busy. And indeed he is. He has to meet someone. If it wasn't too far, she could give him a ride, and soon she felt her phone vibrate. It's her Uncle Zeke calling. So she asked him to wait a bit, and he agreed since he wouldn't be late for his appointment. The nights were already getting cold at this time of year. It was the tailor who mentioned this, and he asked if Sarum had already left. But she had just gone to make a call, so she wouldn't be long, and the tailor said there was no need to talk to her. He just came out to smoke in peace. He mentioned that the skill Jeryeong learned today is called Flash. It was created by his brother, Hyun's father, and he also contributed to its development. Hearing this, Jeryeong became embarrassed. He immediately apologized to him. He should have guessed that the creator of the technique would be there. He apologized for using it without permission, but the tailor wasn't there to complain about that. There's no exclusivity for this kind of thing. In fact, they hesitate to teach it to just anyone, but it's neither wrong nor a discredit to learn through observation. If it's easy to copy, it's natural that more people will eventually use it. But it's not at all easy to copy. At first, he thought Jeryeong had a weak foundation because he had never been taught by anyone. But after watching him in the fight, he realized that if Jeryeong had been lazy, he would never have lost the basic teachings. He doesn't know what happened for him to learn this way, but he has some advice for him. He is talented, and with time and dedication, he will discover his true potential. Becoming a great adventurer won't be a challenge for him. This is a potential that's not far off. But in this world, it's uncommon for prodigies to be admired. Of course, there will be those who admire and help him. But there will always be those who can't overcome their envy and will try to control or destroy him. And perhaps Jeryeong is already aware of stories like these. The boy wants to know if the advice is to hide his potential to avoid unwanted attention. But in fact, it's the opposite. He should never hide his talents. Besides, it's not something he would be able to do, and if he tried, it would only attract people's contempt. So it's better that he does what he feels is best. He should show who he truly is, an unreachable genius. As long as he's capable, he must do his best and absorb as many techniques as he finds useful. Even though it might become a problem, he shouldn't bow down as he just did. Instead, he should raise his head and lift his voice. He's the one who decides what's right or wrong. That choice belongs to the strongest. If he learns a technique and perfects it, he can even claim that it belongs to him. The tailor understands how the boy must be feeling, but in the world of explorers, strength is what rules. His niece's personality is that taken to the extreme, but he doesn't plan on curbing her behavior. She's demanding, and even if she's like that, no one will ever underestimate her, and he thinks Jeryeong should do the same. At that moment, Sarum appears, calling out to her friend. She didn't expect the tailor to be there as well, but it was to tell him to speak with her uncle. He doesn't know why, but she emphasized that he should. She knew he would be there, so she asked if the boy was around and said she wanted to talk to him. So he picks up the phone and Zeke apologizes if he was in the middle of something. He didn't expect to talk to him so soon, but a problem arose and he needed to see him immediately. Jeryeong didn't expect the sudden invitation, but he understood the message and said he would meet him right away. In an abandoned place, they follow a path. It seems there's a secret route that leads to the dungeon. Through the subway, there are various access points that lead to the dungeons. That one in particular belonged to them. Zeke is there with his clothes torn, and he says that someone is inside. He hadn't intended to call him, but the person said they'd rather die than be healed by him, which is why he called. He doesn't know what's going on, but it's clear that they don't get along, and it seems Zeke and the manager had a falling out. The guy says that if he had known Jerryong would arrive so quickly, he would have asked for his shirt, but Jerryong doesn't even know who he is. He says he likes Jerryong's eyes and asks if he was the one who cut Zeke's cheek. He's already famous within the attack group known as the boy who defeated a high-ranking monster. The captain is even excited to meet him, but Zeke cuts off the small talk between the two. They're leaving and there's no point in staying there any longer. Sarum goes with him, but she asked him to call her later. On the other side of the door, there's a reddish light. Jerryong heads there to see what happened. Jerryong felt frustrated, thinking the man truly needed help. And he does. His body and pride are in shambles. He doesn't know why that bastard came all the way there, and he certainly didn't expect him to show up with someone else. Even knowing the answer, the man asked if the boy had a lighter, but Jerryong just wanted to know what that strange light was since the sun had already set. When Jerryong didn't have a lighter, the man asked if he could hand him something. He was too tired to move, and below them there was fire and destruction everywhere. Now Jerryong wants to know what the two had been fighting about. It wasn't really a fight. The man just wanted to burn Zeke until there was nothing left of him. The guy who came with him is impressive. He's not a tank, but he has good defense and the potential to be a big name in the future if he trains for another 10 years. Jerryong says he has something to tell him, but the manager already knows. If it's about quitting being a smuggler, he's free to go, but if Jerryong wants to become an adventurer, there's one condition. He better learn within the next month what the manager plans to teach him. If he doesn't succeed, he should reconsider his plans. It won't be easy, as it's not within his natural talents, but Jerryong isn't sure what it could be. However, the manager reveals that it's exactly what he thinks. It's magic he intends to teach him.